All right. Good evening, everyone, wherever you are listening from, and of course, wherever you're watching us from. My name is Dakore Ekpendu, and I would like to welcome you all to Geopolitics 5.0, which is actually the fifth Geopolitics we're having in a very long time after a year plus. And it's themed Forgotten Wars and Their Shadows, brought to you by Global Sentinel and then Ayanda Network and Public Intel Security Africa. I'll be your host, your moderator for today's event. Like I said initially, my name is Dakore Ekpendu, and just a brief bio about me: a dynamic, independent broadcast executive. You can actually call me a multimedia strategist, yes, and a mediapreneur, and then, of course, a project manager. A few people would say I'm a visionary idealist and a critical thinker. And of course, the founder of Public Intel Security Africa. I would sincerely like to apologize because we were meant to share some slides, but we are having some technical issues. And I do hope that before the end, or maybe while the event is ongoing, we should be able to resolve that. Let's talk about Forgotten Wars and Their Shadows. This event is actually born out of the need to sort out a few issues in Africa. We are currently on the lookout for solutions basically on a few things that had actually gone bad in Africa, because take a look at a few things, and then the internal displaced persons, refugees, and all of that. But before then, I'd like to welcome the distinguished guests, esteemed speakers, fellow participants, because it's an honor to welcome you to the fifth edition of our webinar. Today, like I said initially, we are going to be shedding more light on critical issues. Please, can you get yourself muted if you're not speaking, please? Senator, please, can you help mute everyone? If there's anyone that is not actually speaking, please, so we don't get ourselves distracted. Thank you very much. Okay, like as I was saying, today we are gathered to share more critical light, knowledge on this theme, Forgotten Wars and Their Shadows, with a specific focus on the Congo and Great Lakes region, and a little bit in the Northern African region. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to our esteemed speaker, Professor P.L. Lumumba. He is renowned for his expertise and advocacy across the African continent. Actually, he's from Kenya. And then I would like to also welcome Claude Getbuke, bringing valuable insight and perspective. He is from Rwanda. And then I would also like to welcome Kambole Masuvuli. He's going to be sharing expertise and knowledge across the African continent on the Forgotten Wars. And I'd like to state that he is a Congolese. Take a look at the Democratic Republic of Congo. We have had plagued, by conflict and for decades, resulting in give or take 7 million internally displaced persons and refugees, and then estimated over 200,000 child soldiers. That's very true. And then, of course, the widespread of human rights abuses. This cannot be overemphasized, because when you take a look at sexual violence and exploitation in war conflict areas or conflict zones, you would always find reasons to talk about it and talk about the economic losses exceeding billions in dollars annually due to conflict and instability. These are some of the things we'll be looking into. I would also be delving deeper into some of these things as well. So as we explore the complex dynamics of economic interest and conflicts, and of course, the international responses in these regions that have been stated, would recognize the importance of nuanced discussions and thoughtful analysis by anyone who is going to be speaking. And then as we proceed, we also have scheduled sessions where we have thoughtful leaders and speakers who would also be talking on the theme, Forgotten Wars and Their Shadows, in their best and formidable interest. And then I would also be seeking conversation, informative conversation in quotes, to deepen our understanding of these critical issues. As we begin our discussion, it is my pleasure to say this to you, that at the point of moderation, would have economic drivers of conflict resolution that would also be discussed, humanitarian impact and civilian experiences, effectiveness of international interventions, regional power dynamics. Yes, we're going to be touching that as well. And then potential solutions and policy recommendations. All of these would be our analysis point of view today. So while we incorporate some of these data from different regions on the impact of the Congo wars, highlighting severity of situation and the need for thoughtful discussion, I would like to say welcome on board for everyone who had found it or had actually found it good enough to be part of today's event. I would like to especially welcome you all to the theme, Forgotten Wars and Their Shadows. And then while doing that, I would have to bring Senator Irigu on board, who is going to be introducing the rest parts of the event. Thank you very much. Senator, are you there?
Yes, thank you, Dakore. Thank you for setting this stage. And thank you for setting the stage. And welcome everyone once again. So, like Dakore have noted, this is the 5th edition of our Geopolitics series, meaning that we have done 4 previous editions. And but this one is a bit special because we're going to looking at it will be in series. So I have a small speech I want to put down, which I title Reclaiming the Narrative, Africa, the Forgotten Wars and Global Accountability. So good evening, distinguished guests, esteemed speakers, colleagues and participants joining us from across the world. Thank you and welcome once again. It is both an honor and privilege to welcome you to the 5th edition of the Geopolitics series. GS 5.0 is a platform that passionately committed to interrogating and interpreting global affairs through a distinctly African lens. This is not only to respond to geopolitics, but to reshape it, placing Africa at the center of its own story. Our theme today, Forgotten Wars and Their Shadows, could not be more urgent or necessary. In a world where outrage is curated and solidarity is often selective, the conflict that continues to ravage Africa and its diaspora rarely gets the attention or action they deserve. If you listen to the media, it may seem the only war that is going on is Euro-Asia wars. African conflict is just mentioned as a footnote. Maybe when the conflict gets too there, they just mention it. And if you check, most of the dedication of multilateral organizations, the UN and so, most of the effort is focused on the racial war. Gaza, Israel, and Ukraine, Russia. It's not as if those conflicts doesn't deserve the attention, but from observation, you can see that the African conflict takes a backseat. Even the actors within Africa seems to even put the African issues at the bottom of the ladder. You see that some African countries even champion the cause of other conflicts in other parts of the world, while neglecting the one that is at our doorstep. And they say charity begins at home. So tonight marks the beginning of 4-part journey. And we open with part 1, the Congo DRC and the Great Lake region. The Democratic Republic of Congo is more than a crisis. It is the beating heart of Africa, a nation rich in resources like cobalt, cotton, gold, and uranium, minerals that fuel the global tech revolution and the green economy, yet burdened by chronic instability, exploitation, and silence. Its uranium shaped the nuclear age. Its cobalt powers your smartphone, yet its people remain largely unseen. The tragedy of Congo is not only humanitarian, it is deeply geopolitical. The global power understand its worth. The real question is, do we? And that is the real question, and that is why we are here. Why the world powers understand the importance of this piece of land called Congo DRC, and in particular, and Africa in general. But we Africans, do we? So we are humbled to host 3 powerful voices, and also most of all who are speakers who are also knowledgeable. Professor Pierre Lumumba, a fierce Pan-Africanist and intellectual. Claude Gedbuke, a survivor, activist, and advocate for justice in the Great Lake region, a survivor of the genocide. And Mr. Kambela Museveli, a Congolese researcher and activist whose voice resonates with truth and urgency. The 5th edition builds on 4 compelling sessions before it. Our first edition focused on African Union at 60. We explain how far so far. Then the second edition will look at resource governance in Africa. Is it a blessing or a curse? In fact, that second edition touched at the core of what is happening in the Congo DRC today. And some of the recommendations we raised were still ignored. And thank God, Pierre Lumumba was also one of the speakers in that second edition. The third edition will look at the military coup, the resurgence of military coup in Africa, and the dwindling impact of the intergovernmental organizations like the ECOWAS, the SADC, the EADC. Just like we saw, they could not be able to broker peace in the Congo DRC, as we see. Then the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, looking at it from the African perspective. So each reiterating our mission, Africa must not be a footnote in the global conversation, but a lead author. Our work at Geopolitics series as a flagship program of Initiative for Media Development and Social Impact, the non-profit arm of Kenyan Communication, is driven by strategic partnership and focus on webinar series and policy dialogue, peace building, mediation and citizen diplomacy, security and justice sector reform, media advocacy, investigative journalism and documentary filmmaking, geopolitics education portals and VR simulations, TV podcasts and radio series, policy briefs, reports, and high impact publication, capacity building for African thinkers, analysts, and mediators. Running this program, we collaborate with platforms such as Global Sentinel, Public Interest Security Africa, and Ayanda Media Network to expand this conversation and amplify African perspective. But we cannot do this alone. This is a call to action, a call for partnership and collaboration. To diplomats, security experts, policymakers, scholars, journalists, peace builders, and civil society actors, join us. The African institutions and the diaspora, let's tell our own stories, build our own data, and define our own security priorities. To the global community, we seek solidarity, not sympathy, support, not charity. As we begin this session, let us reflect. Why are external actors still brokering peace in Africa while regional bodies remain sidelined? Why is Congo's tragedy not global emergency, even after millions of deaths? How long will multinational corporations profit from blood minerals while local communities bleed? And when will we move from narrating pain to demanding justice? This is not merely a panel. It is a movement to reclaim our narrative, restore our dignity, and reshape the global order from the margin inward. Let today mark a turning point where Africa doesn't just speak, but leads. Thank you. On behalf, my name is Senator Yorubu, convener GEOPOLITICS series. On behalf of my co-conveners, Ayanda Ngwane and Ms. Dakore Ekbendu, I welcome you all. Thank you. So Ayanda, please, can you introduce?
Thank you, Senator. But I think you would have to introduce Ayanda before Ayanda takes over.
I'm having, sorry, hello everyone. I'm having a situation with my video. Can you just introduce me in the meantime? I'm trying to sort it out this side, please.
Okay. Can you? So Ayanda, please. Okay, you're trying to work on your video.
Yes, sir. Please, can you just go ahead and introduce me? I'm struggling this end with my video. I'll be with you guys. I'm just sorting it out. Thank you.
Okay. Just give me some minutes.
I think the network.
So Ayanda, who is the co-convener of GEOPOLITICS series, in charge of partnership and foreign relations. She's a journalist, TV host, media entrepreneur, PR consultant, and geopolitics and African development advocate, popularly known as Yaya of Africa. Ayanda Ngwane is a distinguished multimedia journalist, and her experience cuts across South Africa, Angola, Nigeria, and have traveled in several parts of Africa. She is the founder and CEO of Ayanda Media Network, and she is also the host and executive producer of Sharing with Ayanda TV. She's current was editor-in-chief of Diplomatic Envoy newsletter and the co-convener of GEOPOLITICS series. So Ayanda brings thought leadership to issues of global affairs through an African lens. We welcome Ayanda.
Okay,
Ayanda,
Ayanda, are you still
having
having
issue with
network issues, or you can?
you may leave your this video if it's having problem. Then introduce our first guest, Mr. Cloud.
Is Ayanda still here?
Okay, why we wait for Ayanda? Dakore, can you introduce Mr. Cloud?
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Our first speaker who will be giving a keynote speech is Claude Gate Bouquet. I hope I did not murder that name. Please forgive me if I did. All right, I would like to read a little bit of him. I know you're smiling already. So, Gate Bouquet is a co-author of the book Survivors Uncensored. He's had over 100 plus testimonies from the survivor of the Rwanda genocide, as well as pre and post genocide in Rwanda. He is also a genocide and civil war survivor. Who has dedicated his life to human rights activism. He is the executive director and the co-founder of the African Great Lakes Action Network, AGLNA. So without wasting much of our time, I would ask Frank to drop his full bio in the chat box so everyone can actually have at least a taste or a feel of what he is and who he is, because he's got a longer bio on my phone here. Frank is one of us, and Frank will be assisting with a few things on the chat box. So please let's make welcome Claude Get a Bouquet. Thank you very much for coming on board. You have the floor.
Thank you, Dakore. You got it right that second time. It's Get a Bouquet. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Senator, and the co-conveners for this event. And it's both an honor, but it's also sad that we have to have this type of conversation about what is happening to the people in the Congo. But also, we have work to do, and our work is to make sure that we do everything possible to make sure that peace prevails. And before I start the rest of my remarks, we'll just like to say that in order for Congo to have peace, there has to be justice, and justice requires truth-telling. And the people of the Congo has been the deadliest conflict since World War II. There is an ongoing genocide in the Congo. Millions of people, more than 6 million, half of them being children, babies, children under the age of 5, have lost their lives as a result of Rwanda and Uganda's invasion of Congo since 1996, with the support of the US, the UK, the European Union, Canada, and a lot of other external actors. So what is happening in the Congo is local, regional, and global. And what does that have to do with me? I think I'll start with, how did I even get involved with AGLAN, which our organization works on making sure that we achieve peace, justice, and prosperity in the region, in the Great Lakes region of Africa. It started out, so I was born in Rwanda, and when I was a child, Rwanda had a civil war that lasted almost 4 years. At the end of that war was a genocide, the 1994 genocide. I hadn't actually seen war for the first 3 years of it until the genocide started, which was started with the shooting of 2 presidents, Rwandan President Juvenal Habyarimana and Burundian President Cyprien Ntaryamira, both of whom were Hutus fighting the Rwandan government at the time, was fighting rebels who were mostly Tutsi rebels led by Rwanda's current president, Paul Kagame. And Paul Kagame, when that war started, was training in the US as a Ugandan soldier. He was actually the chief intelligence officer in Uganda, installed by Yoweri Museveni in the late 80s after they won the war in which a lot of Rwandan exiles had fought in, and then achieved high-ranking positions in Uganda. So he was training in the US at Fort Leavenworth. The war starts, he comes down and he starts leading the rebellion. For those 3 years, there were major horrible atrocities. As I said, I had not experienced war, hadn't seen active fighting until 94. But I had seen amputated people, I had seen injured people, I had seen displaced people. Rwanda had almost 1 million displaced people, homeless people who had left their homes from areas that were occupied by the RPF that was committing all these massive atrocities, similar to what we're seeing in the Congo today. We've got, like, now people are getting called to meetings and they're being surrounded and killed. There are people who are being killed inside of hospitals. There's massive sexual violence happening in the Congo. Rape is rampant, and it's being used as a weapon of war. And just this year, at minimum, 7,000 people have been killed since the reinvasion of the Congo by Rwanda and Uganda using a proxy militia called the M23. And it also took the lives of, so it doesn't just stop with the Congolese, it also took the lives of South African troops and Tanzanian troops and others who were there. And being from Rwanda, Rwanda is a country of, it's said that Rwanda has 13 million people. I think it's probably less than that, but if we're to believe that number, 13 million people, if you take the official numbers of the people who have died in Congo since 1996, when Rwanda and Uganda invaded the Congo, and we just go with the 6 million, which the counting stopped in the mid 2000s, and now we're 20 years later, and there's still been casualties since. And you add the 7 million displaced, that's the whole population of Rwanda. So back to the war in Rwanda, it actually started in Uganda, that war. And before that, there was a war in Uganda that was fought by Yoweri Museveni, who is now president of Uganda, which used the same exact methods as what was used in Rwanda and now is being used in the Congo. Some of the things that we're seeing, like calling ceasefires, by using the ceasefires as an opportunity to actually regroup so that these proxy rebels can continue to take over towns, displace people, and take over mining sites, using peace negotiations as a shield to continue war, basically, and not actually respecting any of these agreements. These are things that we have seen for the last 40 years. So during that part of the 40 years, when I was a kid, when the shooting of the president happened on April 6, 1994, it started a whole genocide where now I started to experience not only war, but the genocidal activities, atrocities that were taking place. We started hearing explosions and bombings and things being destroyed. And during that genocide, I'm gonna make this short because I wanna go back to Congo, but during that genocide, there was a time when me and my mother were actually made to dig our own graves, because after hacking us to death, they wanted us to make sure that we dug the grave that we will be buried in. These are the things that children in Congo are having to endure. It took me a while to start speaking and sharing my story. And it wasn't until I was actually in college and read the book of Frederick Douglass, who was Frederick Douglass was an enslaved African American who was sold into slavery at 7 years old taught himself how to read and write, freed himself at 21 years old. And I was close to that age when I read his book, and that book inspired me to, because not only did he free himself, he freed many other people, but he also used storytelling and his own personal experience and sharing the experience of the people who were going through slavery, and the suffering that they were going through as a way to resist and abolish slavery. And I also felt like I had a story. It may never be as big as Frederick Douglass or have that level of impact, but it inspired me to speak up. And at the time, these atrocities were happening in the Congo. And so my goal when I started speaking was to just share what happens to children when there is war, genocides, and atrocities. So what I'm sharing with you now, what I just shared with you now, is what is happening to children in Congo right now. And that is a direct result of Congo being invaded by its neighbors with the support of Western nations. And so it requires all of us to speak up and to do something. And that's why forums like this are important. So I started speaking, my story started, spreading, and initially there was a lot of resistance. There's still a lot of resistance to my story now. Again, when you're speaking truth to power, there's always somebody that's coming for you. So as I shared my story, it's spread, it's been told all around the world, but I've always felt that it's important that stories like this put a human face to what is actually happening to the people. And as I said today, that is what's happening to the Congolese people. And so what is now, how do we get out of what is happening in the Congo? What is the reason for the fighting in the Congo? There is a lot of attempts to qualify what is happening in Congo as some type of internal revolution or marginalized groups that are fighting to be free and to be treated equally as the rest of the Congolese people. This is false. To characterize what is happening in the Congo as an ethnic war is to almost reduce all Africans to a bunch of stupid people, because this isn't about ethnicity. This is about resources. If you have followed what is happening in the Congo for any amount of time, you'll see what happens with these rebel groups. They go into the Congo. They've come up with all kinds of pretexts. Some of it is ethnic issues. Some of it is Rwanda claiming that they're going after the genocidaires. After they claim to capture all of the genocidaires and neutralize them, they still go into the Congo and say that they're going after those genocidaires. They claim that Congolese people, especially Congolese Tutsis, now it's changed to Congolese Kinyarwanda speakers. So now it's expanded beyond Congolese Tutsis as being marginalized and all of that. But when you look at what happens, it's if you are going in a place to liberate the people, why are you going and raping the women and the children and the babies? Why are you going straight and right to the mines? And you're taking over mines, you're taxing people around those mines, you're displacing people so that they cannot come. And a lot of the reason why the violence is so extreme is to traumatize the people and tear them apart so that they have nightmares of ever even going back to their homes, so that they never want to go back to their homes. That's why there's so much atrocities in the Congo. Now, why is it perpetuated? It's perpetuated because global powers, especially as I said before, and this is very well documented, the US, the UK, France, the European Union, and Canada, and many other Western multinationals, a lot, especially multinationals and governments, are all locked in with two of the most brutal dictators on the African continent, Yoweri Museveni and Paul Kagame, in going into the Congo to allow them, one, to access the mines and get the resources cheap, to displace the people, and to also to be able to secure those mines instead of bringing, say, white mercenaries or Western soldiers. It's easier and it looks better. There's also anti-Black racism. There is no place in the world where you would have 5, 6, 7, 8 million people, non-Black people, especially if it was in Europe or someplace like that, and the world is as silent as they are on the Congo, or they claim that it's complicated. It's not complicated. What happens to countries that invade others? We saw what happened when Russia went into Ukraine. The reaction, it hasn't happened to anybody. We have the European Union signing a contract with Rwanda for almost $1 billion to export minerals that are not found in Rwanda, but found in the Congo. Where are those minerals going to come from? Now they turn around and they fund the military. And you have now basically Central African militaries and East African militaries, Uganda and Rwanda. You, of course, have Kenyan troops also that are now used as forces that go to places Western troops would rather not go. You have Rwandan troops right now in the Congo, of course. You have them in Cabo Delgado in Mozambique to secure French oil company Total's resources. You have Ugandan troops in northeast Congo securing oil reserves for Total, a French oil company. You have Rwandan and Ugandan proxy militias guarding mines or taking over mines in the Congo for a bunch of companies from all over the world. And there's a lot of them, surprisingly or unsurprisingly, from Canada on the Toronto stock market. And then you also have them going to places as far as Africa's sixth region, the diaspora, in places like Haiti, where previously you had Rwandan troops there, and now in recent times you had Kenyan troops there. So all of the what is happening is all tied together. What's happening in the Congo, and I would be remiss not to mention the Congolese elite, who also have done everything to serve themselves instead of serving the people. So we've got external players like Qatar and the US brokering peace deals because they have interest in the Congo. And I'm sure Kambale will speak a little bit more about this. But all of these things actually leave out the Congolese people. And in order to have peace in Congo, the perpetrators of the crimes and the atrocities and the violence in Congo have to be held accountable. And I always like to use one example where, anytime I talk about justice, people say, the UN is not interested in this or some other, global entity. There are two things. The UN does have a report called the UN Mapping Exercise Report. Everybody, please read that. It's only 650 plus pages. So it's not a short document. It's only the most serious atrocities committed in the Congo. And this is in the past. This was only for the period 93 to 2003. And if you see the things that happen in there, they call out all of the various actors, including governments. And it goes as far as saying that if taken to court, Rwandan troops could be found to have committed genocide in the Congo. So the UN has that, and it has recommendations, and the recommendations include peace and reparations for the victims. If that alone is a really good start to bringing lasting peace in the Congo. Secondly, the second example I like to use, and I'll stop there because I would like to leave time for later in Q&A. The second piece of it is we have seen African courts bring justice to African people. I like to use the example of Hissène Habré, the former Chadian dictator, who massacred and tortured and killed so many people. And he was tried in Senegal. He didn't have to go to the ICC. He didn't have to go to a UN court. There was an African court that actually tried him and sentenced him. And I think that, of course, a lot of African entities have failed the Congolese, the African Union especially. But that's also not surprising because I actually had a conversation with somebody that works at the African Union. And what she shared with me was before the assassination of Muammar Gaddafi, a lot of the funding was coming from Libya. And since then, a lot of the funding comes from the European Union. So wherever the European Union is aligned on this conflict in the Congo is where the African elites at the African Union will align. And I think we need to center the voices of the people who are going through these atrocities and their voices longing for justice and peace. And in order to prevent future atrocities, in order to prevent future revenge, justice has to be centered. Otherwise, people who are not given justice, the only thing that they're going to consider is whatever they have in their own power. And I would like to stop there and thank you guys for putting this together. And I'm looking forward to the rest of the conversation. And I appreciate that everyone is involved in making these voices heard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, you've actually spoken very well. Ooh, that's a lot. And then for those who've been listening, I'd like to just set a few points I noted down. And of all the points, I think I'll just have to ask these valid questions, just in case no one had actually asked before. Who is Africa's enemy? You know, because when you talk about the Rwanda civil war and the genocide, and you talked about the massive sexual violence, which is actually a weapon of war, it reiterated back to me, and I keep asking, what is really going on in Africa and the world itself? The experience of Rwanda, and then linking it up to what the Congolese are actually experiencing right now. It's quite a deep one, very deep. And I'll have to ask again, who is Africa's enemy? Because even if we make ourselves our own enemy because of the resources, we also have external enemies coming as source of help, you know. And these are the things they've actually highlighted, you know, attempts to qualify internal revolutions and then, you know, treated equally. These are false narratives. And again, who is Africa's enemy? So thank you very much for that. We'll be looking into that during the question and answer segment. And I would like to call the next speaker, Kambale Musavuli. So let me read a little bit about Kambale. Kambale is a Congolese political analyst and human rights advocate with over 2 decades of experience amplifying African voices on sovereignty, justice, and global solidarity issues. He is the international spokesperson for the Center for Research and the Congo Kinshasa. His work focuses on exposing the root causes of conflict in the Great Lakes region, particularly the role of foreign interests in the exploitation of natural resources and the perpetuation of armed violence. He has briefed institutions such as the United Kingdom and the United States Congress, and is a frequent commentator on African geopolitics in international media, including the New York Times, Washington Post, Al Jazeera, Democracy Now!, The Guardian, and many other platforms. Musavuli is recognized for his principles, advocacy, and Pan-African perspective, contributing to a growing movement for African-led solutions to the continent's political and economic challenges. Please let's make welcome Musavuli taking up the next keynote speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Dakore. You asked a question, and I'm tempted to answer that question before the Q&A session. And really reshape even my thinking about what I wanted to present. But before I get into that, I first want to recognize that there are many Congolese who are adequate, who could be on this platform, particularly the Congolese women who have bear the brunt of this conflict, and they have not been given platform to speak. And I say that because many people who have trained me, most of them have been Congolese women. And I remember that they set me down in my younger years when I started advocating, sharing with me the stories about how when there were peace negotiations in Sun City, bringing warlords to sign a peace accord, they did not include the Congolese in the discussion. But Congolese women in Europe, in the Americas, in the DRC and other parts of the African continent, mobilized, put their own financial resources together, flew in a group of women to South Africa and actually entered the meeting, right? And that story is not written in a book anywhere. I met the women who did that. And they told us, and the people they were training at the time, why it's important for us to be in spaces and share our story, because our story sometimes is skewed. So that's one level. The second part of what I want to share is today and tomorrow. Now, today, many people around the world, particularly Africans, are mobilizing for sovereignty in Burkina Faso. Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso is facing a threat that the United States government would like to remove him by force. We heard that directly from the head of AFRICOM, of the US military. So I saw the solidarity today. Now, so even here in Accra, we went to the Burkinabe embassy, protested, and demanded that the US AFRICOM remove its hands from AES, the Alliance of Sahel States. So the part now that I think that's important to remember is what we are going to do tomorrow. Tomorrow is May 1st, a day where we celebrate workers around the world. And these workers, particularly in DRC, have been forgotten. They have been forgotten when they are at the center of the fourth industrial revolution. They have been forgotten when they are the ones digging the minerals that make even my cell phone work, my laptop function, the drones being used to bomb Palestinians can exist without Congo's cobalt. The weaponry that's destroying the world can't happen if young children in the mines in the DRC are not digging with their bare hands and dying for it, right? So we have to lift up the story of the workers in the DRC, the artisanal miners, those who are at the forefront of this fourth industrial revolution that we don't hear in the story. Now to what is unfolding in Congo. I always wonder, where do I start? Should I start in saying since 1996, there's been a war in the Congo waged by Congo's neighbors, Rwanda and Uganda. They invaded twice in 96 and 98 and continue to support proxy rebel militias. Does that even resonate with people listening? If I keep saying the same thing, right? I know what the war is about. I know that our neighbors are implicated. Are Africans listening? I will say that they're not. Some are, right? But many others are not. The reason why they are not listening is because they heard the notion of what they call benevolent dictator. And they believe that the concept of benevolent dictator is something that we as Africans have to adopt, right? What do I mean by that? I've lived in West Africa now since 2018. I've met a lot of young people in West Africa. And I'm always shocked when they tell me that they love Paul Kagame of Rwanda. And I ask myself, where did they get the information about what is actually happening in Rwanda? Because as a Congolese, we always say that the war in the Congo is waged by US ally, British ally, Rwanda and Uganda. But how come in West Africa we don't have this information? Well, Claude mentioned it. He kind of hinted at Qatar, right? But the way to even understand Qatar's engagement in what's happening in the Congo, we should know that there are billions of dollars invested to make sure that every single African will not look at the situation in the Congo as it is. How it's done through PR, through media engagement, to the narrative of, unfortunately, the worst, one of the worst killings of our century, the genocide in Rwanda. Unfortunately, it's been marketed in a way to prop up a dictator rather than actually telling the story of the victims and those who actually died during the genocide, right? And they have skewed the narrative so much that I do not have to remind everyone on this call that over 6 million people have died. I can just tell you what happened in 2025. From January to now, the conservative number of deaths is 3,000 people killed. The highest number from the Congolese government is at least 9,000 people have been killed. That's the number that the Congolese government has been using, right? And in the process of me saying that there have been deaths, the media is going to tell us that there is a rebel group that's negotiating peace. They will tell us that there are SADC forces, the South African and Tanzanians, I think Burundi and others are helping the Congolese. They are going to say that President Paul Kagame went on CNN, interviewed by a Kenyan journalist, Larry Madowo, where he says he doesn't know if Rwandan troops are in the DRC or not. They will remind people also of, well, this problem in the Congo, there is a government in Congo. That government should take accountability. Why do you always have to point fingers at Rwanda and Uganda when you have elected a leader called Tshisekedi? So Congolese, you have to straighten out your problems. For every single one of those points, I have a response to that. But what is the response to the parents who are trying to find the dead bodies of their children, and they have no idea where the bodies are because people have been buried in mass graves? When we are talking, right, all of us lately have read into the press that the Congolese government has engaged with the United States to give them minerals in exchange for security, right? And we are hearing some peace accords on the way. We are hearing that there will be national dialogue in DRC. But for the dead, from January to now, what are we telling them? Are we telling them, right? So be as a Congolese for now, right? I said that you have a brother, you have a sister. They have been killed. The sister have been raped. And then someone around the world comes and tell you, just wait, negotiate. Don't worry about it. They just died in 2025. There were more people who died before, so your death doesn't really matter. Let's just go ahead and negotiate. That is actually what they've been asking Congolese people to do with the millions of deaths. Now we have to step back and ask ourselves, is Congo a country member of the African Union? If the Congo is a member of the African Union, what is the call for the Africans on the continent around the situation in the Congo? Regardless of the narrative, we say, okay, there is a conflict there. It has been raging for 29 years now, and there is no peace and stability. We will say, if Nnamdi Azikiwe was alive today, what will he do for Congo? If Kwame Nkrumah was alive today, what will he do for Congo? If Ben Bella and Nasser, I can go on and on, right? The founders of the African Union, the mothers and fathers of Pan-Africanism, what will they say about the situation in Congo? They will say something very simple. And they put it in the African Union Charter, right? So for anybody who call themselves Pan-Africanists and still confused about the Congo, we should go back to the text to dispel the myth of the invaders of DRC and their backers in the West. On the question of national sovereignty, you will hear scholars, some of them in East Africa, many of them in the West, I won't mention names, speak about the history of the Congo, where they said that the colonial borders of DRC was made by the Belgians, right? at the so-called Berlin Conference. And there are population on both sides of Rwanda and DRC. So there must be some real claim around changing the border, quote unquote, balkanizing the DRC. Do we believe that Kwame Nkrumah will say so? Don't quote me on it. We know what Kwame Nkrumah said about DRC, right? And we know what they put in the Charter of the African Union. They said that for now, right, from 1963 to now, to prevent conflict, that the colonial borders as it is should not be touched. That what we must build toward, right, is a continental unity. So if you're hearing a Pan-African going against what Pan-Africanists who brought us independence say, that we have to build Pan-African unity, you should ask yourself the question, is that person a Pan-African? This is why in my analysis, when I look at what's happening in Mali and Niger and Burkina Faso, bringing in a new bloc, right? These countries are not carving each other into smaller bases. They're coming together, right? ECOWAS as a body is a great original boundary. Is how do we bring Pan-African unity rather than carving up the continent, African countries? So that's one level. The second point that's important around the Congo, and I hope during the question and answer I'll go deeper. As I say, I didn't want to spend the whole time lecturing people about DRC. I can give resources that people can go watch films and read, but there are some key points to discuss. The second point is what unfolded at the United Nations in February. There is a resolution at the United Nations called 2773. It was passed unanimously by UN Security Council members. In the 15 members of the UN Security Council, there were 3 African countries, right? So before someone tried to reject and say, oh, you're talking about the UN, does not count. Let's look at the configuration of the Security Council. There is a Security Council, and within the Security Council, there are 3 African countries. The 15 members of the UN Security Council passed a resolution in February demanding that one of Congo's neighbors, Rwanda, remove its troops from DRC soil. The reason why the 3 African countries voted alongside with the remaining members of the Security Council is because the evidence of Rwanda's military presence in the Congo is irrefutable. For anyone who has read the UN group of experts and just skipped to the appendix, the annexes, you will see photo evidence of Rwandan soldiers in DRC. You will actually also see sophisticated weaponry, like surface-to-air missile that the M23 is using in DRC. Clearly, they did not buy it into a supermarket, right? It's coming from the Rwandan military lot. That the evidence was so overwhelming that even African countries who were hesitant in holding another African country accountable, right, actually say these soldiers must leave the DRC. So in that context, as in the matter of international law, even on looking at African affairs, we should all demand that as Congolese resolve its own problems, there should not be any other nation destabilizing the DRC by sending troops over. And that's very critical for the element. And that's what I've been actually sharing with many Africans, that if you're thinking about a solution for peace and stability in the DRC, and you're not looking at Resolution 2773, which had African countries, 3 of them say, Rwandan troops must leave, then you're not interested in the solution of peace. And the last point connects with the discussion of Claude and connects to my earlier submission. After the millions of deaths in DRC, we cannot discuss peace and stability in DRC without talking about justice. The same militias of yesterday, who committed crimes yesterday, have not been held to account. M23 military commander Sultani Makenga was a rebel leader in 1996 during the invasions of DRC by Rwanda and Uganda. He was part of a rebel group called AfDL. From 96 to now, he has committed the crimes. And no one has held him accountable. So we believe very strongly that because there is a culture of impunity and lack of accountability for crimes in DRC, we keep seeing this flare of conflicts. Right? So if we do not put that at the center of any peace negotiation, of any process of peace and stability in DRC, we will be discussing the Congo tomorrow. I will end by making an appeal. And as I say, I will rather go into the question and answer section to expand more on some of the ideas and topics that I've shared. But I want to make an appeal to Africans. We stopped apartheid South Africa. It took a while for us to stop apartheid South Africa. But when Africans were clear, you had high school teachers, right? In Senegal, writing on the chalkboard, apartheid is crime against humanity before they taught the class during the apartheid regime. So they were even teaching young people in the country, knowing you are going to school right now, but you need to know that our brothers and sisters in South Africa are struggling for stability. Today, as we discussed, Congolese are making the same appeal. No matter what we believe the narrative is, I know the Congolese people, since Patrice Lumumba, I could go all the way to the Congo Kingdom, they've been fighting for the question of the land, the control of their own land, their own resources for the benefit of the people of the Congo. And they're faced by challenges. Of course, the Congolese government has to be held to account. The Congolese are going to do that. It's a struggle, and we are fighting. We must hold Congo's neighbors accountable, Rwanda and Uganda. We must hold corporations accountable who have been involved in the pilfering of Congo's resources. We must hold the European Union for providing Congo's neighbors with weaponry that's being used to kill people in DRC. But all of that will require active engagements of Africans to know that the future of the African continent depends on what's happening in the Congo. And it's not me who said it first, right? It's another Pan-Africanist who said it first, actually even an internationalist. Now, Frantz Fanon, as he was in Algeria fighting with the Algerians, wrote numerous books. And when you just pull up the book Towards an African Revolution, literally the last paragraph of that book, when you go to the last page, for those of you who have it, take it, go to the last page, and you read the last sentence. The last sentence of the book Toward the African Revolution says, let us never forget it, that the fate of us all is at stake in the Congo. So for all of us, we must fight for a free Congo. Go to freecongo.org, sign up, stay connected. And I'm looking forward to the engagement and discussion to go deeper and deeper for anyone who has questions, and also a debate and discussion with other panelists so we can expand on the discussion. For us, it's not just a discussion. We have family members, we have friends, we have people that we know who have been affected by this conflict. And we want the peace to come to the Congo now, but we know that it will only come through justice.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Thank you very much for that passionate and awesome presentation. I'm happy that we finally got to, we are trying to reach you, send email, and thank God we have Claudia, who is very passionate and keep on assuring us, don't worry, I'll get across to him, And here you are, and I'm quite really impacted by the core of your message. There should be African solidarity, to the issues that is happening in Congo, and that we should not just look at the actors, who is right, who is wrong. It's actually the Congolese people that actually are the receiving end, and we must hold those people, either the government in Congo or the Rwanda or the external powers, be it European Union, and whatever that is arming and somehow playing some clandestine role, you know, and the neighbors that have not really shown themselves, you know, in glory to resolve the issue. And we've been happy about African solution to African problem, and this is one of it. But yet, it seems we have failed again. SADC and East African community failed to bring these issues because of vested interest. And look at, it's Qatar and US are trying to broker peace. And how does that show that, anyway, during the question and answer and comment, I'm sure there'll be Pandora box, and Prof is waiting on the wing to also, and like you cited the history of apartheid, you know, it required African solidarity to ensure that that era become a bygone issue, even though the trappings of it is still there. But the core of it is that there should be African solidarity when it comes to DRC issue. It concerns not only the people of Congo, but the whole Africa. Thank you very much. Stand by for questions and other to cap up and round up your concluding remarks. So before that, we'll now call on Prof. I'm sure Prof is back, but my colleague will do the introduction. My co-convener, Ayanda, are you here? I know that you logged off, maybe due to network. Have you been able
Yes,
to resolve?
I'm here, Senator. Thank you. Finally. I'm having really network issues my end. Sorry for all that.
Okay. I like your yes, solidarity.
Barrett.
Yeah, Barrett. Correct. So
Thank
go ahead.
you. Thank you. So is Prof back? So,
yes, Prof is back. Prof is back.
Okay, open for me.
You can go ahead. We can see you.
Okay, I'm so pleased and happy that I'm introducing one of my favorite professors in the world, our daddy, Prophet Lumumba. Can you? Okay. Prof. Lumumba is the Professor of Public Law, a hold of LAD Director, and it's such a pleasure. I'm still trying to get my network working well and my system. He's an advocate of High Court of Kenya and Tanganyika and certified mediator. He's a fellow of Institute of Certified Public Secretary of Kenya, a fellow of Kenya Institute of Management, and honorary fellow of, the list is long. He's the immediate former director and chief executive officer of the Kenya School of Law, a former secretary of the Constitution of Kenya Review Commission, a former director of the Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission. He is the founding trustee of the African Institute for Leaders and Leadership, and the founding chairman of the founding dean, Kabarak University School of Law, a former lecturer at the University of CU Africa, where the now University of USA, Nairobi Summer School, and the Chancellor of the University of Henniges. Welcome, Prof. We don't even need to be reading your profile because everybody knows and admire you. Please welcome on our webinar set. Once again, we had you last 2 years ago, and it's such an honor to have you again. Thank you, Prof. I'm not open. Hello?
Prof, if you are there, can you take the stage? We'll post the rest of the profile in the comment section. Has Prof left? Is he still there? I saw him coming.
Okay.
While we're waiting for Prof, let me try and see if I can reach him offline. Let's open.
Can we
floor.
go to question and answers, the few first ones, while we're waiting for Prof and direct to our other guest speakers? Is that okay?
Yes, let me see if I can reach you.
Okay. Dakore.
Hi, Ayanda. All right. You look absolutely stunning. Thank you very much for coming on board. And then I'd like to thank the last speaker who had actually spoken, Kambale. He's actually highlighted a few things. So before we go into the proper questions, because I had been taking note of so many things, can I start with Musavoli? While we wait for Professor to come on board. Okay, yes, I would like to start with you, sir. You talked about the solution for peace, and then you talked about the struggling of the instability of the African continent. And then okay, let me take it from this angle. Now, the future of the African continent depends on what is happening in the DRC, just like you have stated. And then you said we should make use of the hashtag Free Congo. Now, I would like to ask, do you think Africans are united enough for this purpose? Do you think we love ourselves enough to get ourselves delivered? Or do you think we are hypocrites, or we are still under this shadow, in quotes, of selfishness, where we feel we work for some international bodies against our own very souls?
Well, we have to differentiate the African elite from the African people. And I will use Nigeria as an example. A few years ago, while Nigerians were in the streets fighting and working on a hashtag called HandSARS, I hope you remember that moment. And during that moment, it was Nigerians, right, who actually lifted up the hashtag Congo is bleeding. At the same time as they were advocating to stop police brutality in Nigeria, the Nigerian people understood that outside of Nigeria, there were also people facing the same thing. A similar situation is happening also with the Palestinian movement, right? With Free Palestine, where Free Congo is also known. That I'm a firm believer that ordinary people, the people of the world, the working people of this world, when they are informed and they know, they rally. And the reason why they rally is because of your first question. You ask, who is the enemy, right? The enemy is capitalism. And capitalism appears in Africa, in Europe, in North America, everywhere around the world, and manifests itself where ordinary people are dispossessed of the land, resources are stolen, and elites benefit from it. So on the continent, when we say we Africans, I always get worried because I'm saying I'm not part of the elite of Africa. I'm not, I'm sorry, I don't know where you fall into this narrative. I'm not Tinubu, right? I'm an ordinary Congolese fighting for justice for the people of the Congo, and people who understand what is happening can unite. So the challenge for us is, how do we make sure that ordinary Africans really understand that whenever they're getting load shedding in their country, they don't have electricity in their country, is because there is a country called the DRC that can provide electricity to the entire African continent. Yet, it's not free yet. Right? And the founding fathers of Pan-Africanism understood that. So as long as we differentiate between the people and the compradors, the bourgeois, the elite of our countries, then we can say that people of Africa or working people of the world will always unite with the oppressed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Let me also ask this. I would have to finish yours before any other person, comes up. Okay, for those in the room, if you have any other question, thank you, Sion. If you have any other question to ask Musafili, please signify by raising up your hands. Just use the chat box. If you cannot ask verbally, you can actually put down any question on the chat box. I would do well to read it. And I would also do well to read some of the things here noted down in the chat box. I have, okay, I don't know what this is directed to, but I have Andeline who says, no, we don't love ourselves. And then I also have the daughter of Congo saying Africans are not united. Africans are hypocrites. Okay.
No, so I can't do it because of this is my system. I'm supposed to be reading this. That's why there's delay. My system, I can't see.
Okay, yeah. Did okay, all right, thank you. So we also have Data of Congo saying DRC is the future. And then we have Madoshi Mbongi saying Paul Kwagame has sponsored certain Pan-Africanists to populate his false Pan-Africanist beliefs while he's perpetuating Western hidden agendas against his fellow Africans. We have to stop the so-called Pan-Africanism, which lay in puppet opulence, yet they turned into propagandists without acknowledging the worst consequences against Africanity. Let's revive the real Pan-Africanism of our forefathers, who illuminated us by preaching, by example, of their sacrifices. So, Musafili, I don't know what you have to say about this, coming from Madoshi. How do we mitigate this in the era of technology, and then going back in history, like you said, can we revive the real Pan-Africanism of our forefathers? When you talk about forefathers, you're talking about primitive age, but then there was still consciousness of technology in their own way. So how do we mitigate this, please?
Well, we have to be rooted in the definition of what we call Pan-Africanism. And many people define Pan-Africanism, right? Bill Clinton tomorrow can wake up and say he's a Pan-Africanist. I won't be surprised. The reason why I say that is because there is a bank on the African continent called EcoBank. I'm sure all of us know about EcoBank. EcoBank, in the advertising, it says that EcoBank is a Pan-African bank, right? But there is no such thing as Pan-Africanism for investors, right? And why I'm using EcoBank as an example. The reason why they call themselves a Pan-African bank is because they are using geolocalization. They're saying that because I am in Kinshasa, because I am in Abidjan, I am in Douala or any other countries, and I'm in that they are talking about. That's not the one that we're talking about. The Pan-Africanism I'm talking about is the Pan-Africanism of the Fifth African Congress, right? At the Fifth Pan-African Congress in 1945 in Manchester, you had Du Bois, you had Padmore, you had Kwame Nkrumah, and many other Pan-Africanists and internationalists. They sat down in 1945 to actually define Pan-Africanism. It's not a unity for the sake of unity. Why are we united? Let's be very frank. Why are we as Africans wanting to unite? Is it because we like one another? Of course we may like one another. But it's because of something very fundamental. Our people are oppressed, our people are deprived of resources. And we happen to have the gold, the diamond, the lithium, the cobalt in our land. And the Pan-Africanism of 1945 clearly states that our unity is dependent of a United States of Africa under the umbrella of scientific socialism. What does that mean? It simply means that we're going to fight for our land. We're going to fight for our resources. We're going to take those resources for us, the people, use the profit of the exploitation of these resources to build our roads, our hospitals, our universities, and better the lives of African people. So a Pan-Africanism that doesn't take into account the bettering of African people in peace, in justice, in prosperity, is not the Pan-Africanism that we're discussing. This is why it's very easy when you hear someone said that Kagame is a Pan-African, to dismiss that. So wait a minute, he can't be a Pan-Africanist. If Bill Gates loves Kagame, if the Emir of Qatar loves Kagame, if Bill Clinton loves him, and they all have given him so much money to quote and unquote build this country by actually making Rwanda the intelligence hub for East Africa at the detriment of the people, while he and Museveni have invaded another country, that is not the Pan-Africanism that we're talking about, right? The Pan-Africanism we're talking about is the Pan-Africanism where we are not seeing wars. Can you imagine Kwame Nkrumah? I'm going to use Kwame Nkrumah as the last point, right? He's the founder of Ghana. And the reason why I insist that he's the founder of Ghana, because Gold Coast, that was controlled by the British, is not Ghana, right? Ghana is Gold Coast and a part of land around Togo. Why is that important to know the distinction? Kwame Nkrumah, when he mobilized with his comrades to have independence of Ghana, went to chiefs in the northern part of Ghana and told them, I say, hey, this land Gold Coast is going to become independent. Do you want to be part of that? These chiefs agreed. That's why that part, when you look at the map of Ghana before 1957 and after, you see that it's completely different. That he actually united people by speaking to them and saying, join our union. But what is happening in the Central African part of the continent is not that. Right? Massacre, is displacements, land grab. So the definition is rooted in 1945, the 1945 Fifth Pan-African Congress. Then we are talking. If it's rooted in the Pan-Africanism of EcoBank, then you know that's a capitalist process that has nothing to do with creating prosperity for the African.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Campbell. Thank you for doing justice. I can see there are some hands raised. Jim Paul has been raising his hand for a long time. So, Jim Paul, can you?
Thank you. Good evening, good morning to you all. My name is Jean Paul. I do have a question for you, Kambale, but before I ask my question, I would like to say this. Pan-Africanists, both in the continent and in the diaspora, have failed Congo. We have failed Congo. We have one of the loudest Pan-Africanists on the panel. I heard Prof is here. We are all here, great minds. I did not feel the sense of urgency that I felt in the last couple days when we heard the news that the U.S. general threatened Traoré. Now the whole world shook. London, Paris, even here in the United States. Straight. Congolese people have been dying for 3 decades. All kinds of impunity, injustice, looting, sexual violence. I did not feel the same sense of urgency to demonstrate on behalf of Congolese women and children. The continent. We have failed. Professor is here. I hope he's listening to me. We have failed Congo. Now, my question to Kambale is, recently we saw Rwanda and Congo signed a declaration of principle. What does that mean? What should people expect? Is this just a tranquilizer to try to calm the situation down? Because looking at history, they have signed multiple agreements. It has been violated.
Sorry, I notice everybody just asking only Kambale. We still have Cloud there, the first speaker. We can also direct some questions to him if we want, if we have. Thank you. You can go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. So the Congo and Rwanda have signed multiple agreements and has been violated and has not bear any fruit. What should we expect from this recent declaration of principles? Thank you.
Claude, you want to take that?
Yeah, I can start, and maybe we can. I can yield the time to you after. Um, the declaration for me is no different than all of the other. Like I said earlier, this is something that's been used in previously as a tactic of war anyway. In Uganda in the 80s, in Rwanda in the 90s, in Congo in the 90s, the 2010s. It's no different than what was signed in 2012, 2013 previously. Um, Again, this does not include the Congolese people. Where are the voices of the Congolese people? And until the Congolese people's voices are included, and until there is justice as the center of what is happening, this is just a deal being brokered between the Western and Eastern. Obviously, Qatar is in there too. Western imperialist and the Congolese elites. And this is where the Congolese elites have failed the Congolese people for a long time. The second piece is it also um, it also corners the Congolese government to it's almost like, you know, when you have two children and they get in a fight, and you know one of them is wrong and you don't hold them accountable. You just say, you know, everybody come on, just get along. It's the type of thing that's happened. The Congolese people are not getting justice. This is about the exploitation of resources. The whole declaration is about facilitating the ease of access to resources from the Congo by the US currently, looking for critical minerals, especially with the trade war happening and cutting off, and China cutting off the critical minerals to the US. The second piece, I think it's offering a way out to Rwanda, and there's something in there that's very dangerous that I want to share. There is something about returning refugees. I was a refugee in Congo, Uganda, and Kenya before. I'm always in favor of refugees going back to where they're from as long as they feel safe. I'm never in favor of refugees being forced to return home, because usually there's a reason why they choose to remain homeless and in very difficult conditions. And if we go back 7 years ago, in February 2018, Congolese refugees, mostly actually Tutsi ethnicity, wanted to return to Congo. They demanded the UNHCR to return them to Congo from Rwanda. And the response from Rwanda was to unleash the police and the military, and they went, surrounded those refugees and massacred them. And the organizers who survived, there's no telling where they are this day. There were some sham trials, and there were people who just completely disappeared with no trials. And what I find dangerous in this whole thing is, now that the whole world is telling Rwanda, and we need to really have the whole world not only tell Rwanda, but Uganda also, to stop invading the Congo, to get out of Congo, remove their troops from Congo, stop occupying Congo. Now that this is happening, this part of returning refugees, especially if they try to rush it, they will use it to bring in Rwandan troops now to take on occupied parts of Congo, claiming to be Congolese people, and then start another war because the whole war is about resources. Rwanda's regime under Paul Kagame wants these resources. They want to be a part of this resource exploitation without actually having good relations with Congo, which Rwanda can be a part of it. And if you look at the infrastructure, the nearest infrastructure to Eastern Congo is in Rwanda. It could happen, but they don't want it to happen on good terms, because they make a lot more money by doing it the way they do it. So now, what I think is dangerous is these refugees are actually going to be used as a way to infiltrate thousands and thousands of troops into the Congo. Right now, there is more than 4,000 Rwandan troops in the Congo, according to UN reports. And according to Rwandans that I speak to, some who are tied to the military, they actually are more. Now, what happened in Rwanda, similar to this? 1990 to 1994 was a civil war in Rwanda. In the middle of that civil war, there was a peace agreement signed, the Arusha Peace Accords. Part of the Arusha Peace Accords was to allow 600 RPF soldiers. RPF soldiers were the rebel groups who were led by Paul Kagame, to come and assure security for their politicians who were going to be integrated into the government at the time. This is what actually has been happening in the Congo. Rebels come, they fight, they commit atrocities, and then there's a peace deal. They are given amnesty, no justice, and then they're integrated into the government. And so in Rwanda, what happened was they brought those 600 soldiers, but then what they would do is remove those soldiers from the place that they were housed, the parliament quarters. They were removed from there, they would leave, and they would put on civilian clothes and go into the community and bring in more and more soldiers from their base and bring in more recruits, to the extent that after 3 months, there were thousands and thousands of them that were already infiltrated in Rwanda. So I think that's one of the things that's going to be used as a tactic of war, and then it's going to change to say this time we, Rwanda and Uganda, Kagame and Museveni, we're not invading the Congo. It's the Congolese people inside of the Congo that are starting a civil war of their own. So that's what I wanted to add. And the other thing is, I just don't trust the intentions of the US. I don't trust the intentions of any imperial powers being fair brokers of peace. We have seen in previous times where US had agreements with other players. We have, Saddam Hussein, we have Osama bin Laden, we've got people all over the Mobutu of Congo. They turned on him, unleashed Kagame and Museveni on him. So I think Congo needs to center the Congolese people. I do think that as long as there is no justice as part of any deal, that deal is not going to last, and it's not going to bring lasting peace. And here is what I would say. If anybody is serious about stopping what's happening in Congo, isolate Rwanda and Uganda. Both are landlocked countries. If they cannot trade, the European Union, if they stop their deal, the $1 billion deal of critical minerals that come out of the Congo, and stop that, and US companies stop, and Canadian companies, there's a lot of Canadian companies on the Toronto stock markets that are trading conflict minerals from the Congo. If they stop trading this way and say, until you remove your troops and until you actually set up deals that work, and by the way, African countries can do this also. You have Kenya and Tanzania. Those are the two countries where the export happens through if things are coming through Rwanda. Those African countries can also do that. If there's that kind of isolation and you stop foreign aid, it would not take long for these rebels to actually, the so-called rebels, for the invasion to stop. And we've seen the type of weapons. I mean, these guys beat South African troops. South Africa has one of the strongest militaries on the continent, and they surrounded them and actually held them hostage when they attacked Goma. So it's not serious to just talk. I think it's going to require serious action. And so that is my thoughts on this declaration. I do hope that I'm wrong. I want to see this declaration actually prove me wrong and bring lasting peace in the Congo. I just don't see how the Congo will ever achieve peace without justice. And without peace in the Congo, all of Africa is bleeding. When Congo bleeds, Congo is the heart of Africa. It's it's the center, it's the trigger, it's a trigger on the pistol. It's everything. And if Congo is not stable, the continent is unstable. And I'll yield to you, Kambale, if you want to add anything to that on this declaration.
No, I mean, what you said was very direct. I think the only addition will be around how we think about resource sharing. Congo has 9 bordering nations. None of these nations are going to Washington to sign an agreement to say, please share your resources, right? As neighbors, we can trade. We don't need an overseer for that. So we already know that the intentions are dubious. Another element is important to know that Congolese, the vast majority of them, are against the deal. When it was known to the civil society in DRC that the Congolese government was actually lobbying the US government, the civil society in the mining sector in Katanga actually put out an open statement, literally saying we do not support this deal, that the Congolese government would like to take our resources, our future to the West. But their voices have not been heard. I have not seen any major media cover that local civil society organization have put out a statement against it. And lastly, no matter what agreement is signed anywhere else, let's just go back to Patrice Lumumba himself. He said that our history is not going to be written in Washington, in Brussels, in London. It's going to be written on the African continent. By the African, it's going to be a history of glory and dignity. So when he said that, it's the reason why I'm continuously making an appeal to Africans. No matter what we believe is happening in DRC, we all have leverage. I am so sure that the 3 African countries at the UN Security Council who voted to support Resolution 2773 were educated, maybe by, to some extent, some Congolese or people in the field. So the more we educate people around the situation, it's going to help. You never know where, for example, senator is going to be tomorrow. Who is going to be talking to? I don't know who Dakore is meeting tomorrow, who she's going to be talking to. The more people get to know the situation and know that for the Congolese, our call is very simple. We have our land. We want to control our land. We want to control our resources for the benefit of the Congolese people and the African continent. Why? Because even in every speech Patrice Lumumba wrote after 1958, he always said, Viva Congo, Viva Africa. So he understood the importance of Congo for the African continent. And as long as we don't have peace and stability there, Africa's futures continue to be stolen. And I'll yield there.
Thank you very much. Okay. I think we still have people that, okay, Dakore, just a second, so that we allow the second, Njoku Kumbi. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you very much for the word.
After Kumbi, then we allow Kone Fadile to take the stage.
Yes, I mean, this was not really a question that I had to ask, but just to reinforce something that Kambale has been saying about the Pan-Africanism, because I think that most of the time we too much forget Haiti in that story. And I think it's really worth remembering that you had people like Antenor Fiamma and also Benito Silva that came out of that fight in Haiti for independence. And what they said
is
it's
my highest speaker.
Can I go on? Do you hear me?
Do.
Yeah, so what I
Yes.
was saying is that what they wanted, what they had in mind was to better the lot and the rights of Afro-descendant people, Africans outside and inside the continent. And when we look at what Paul Kagame is doing, when people are calling Paul Kagame a Pan-Africanist, uh, are we saying that he's perpetuating that thought? Are we saying that he's really in accordance to what those fights have been represented for Black people in the world? And I think that we always need to come back in a certain way to Haiti, because it's really foundational for us in terms of rights, in terms of thoughts, in order to question our leaders today and all the Africans that are saying that they are Pan-African. If we look at what is happening in the Congo today, we can doubt in many people when they call themselves Pan-Africanists, because I, as a Congolese person, don't really see much Africans actually invested in a fight to better the lot and the rights of the Congolese people, but people abiding by certain narratives brought by the West, presenting us murderers, serial killers like Paul Kagame and Yoweri Museveni as being those Africans that are going to lift Africa and Africans. So I think that question is really important for us Africans to ask: are those people willing to better the lot and the rights of African people outside and inside Africa? So this was my contribution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Kumbi. Thanks for your contribution. We have Kone Fadile, please.
Thank you very much, Senator. First of all, let me appreciate the presentation of Kambale, very educative and very deep. You took my mind back to Patrick Lumumba, and that's where I want to start from. Enemy within and enemy outside. Who killed Lumumba? Who killed the Secretary General of the United Nations? How did the UN operation fail to secure Congo? And that is where the trouble started from. Enemy within. My question, I cannot dispute all you have said. My question is, who is going to lead for the fight to make the recommendation like Nigeria led during the Liberia and Sierra Leone crisis? Who is going to lead us? That should be our focus. If we can curtail the enemy within, the enemy outside is very little thing. We can block them off. But the enemy within is entrenched within the Congolese people. The other day, they are mocking the president of Congo that he was selling pizza somewhere else. I cannot take a decision. Who are the people saying this? Kigali had the foothold because somebody there, some people there are giving him help. Please, let's find the solution. Who is going to lead us, like Nigeria did? Like Lumumba, if you go back to the Congo cables that was sent in during the crisis in the 1960s, the same thing is happening now. Do not call Congo cables, it's something else. So that's my appeal to all of us, to your government, to individuals. Talk to your people. They have gone to International Criminal Court, they convicted some people, but what is the result? So that's the way I see it, Kambale. I really appreciate your concern, but then we're handicapped when we still have the enemy within. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kone Fadile. Thanks for your input. We have Gail from Fizzy. girl from Fiji.
Thank you so much for giving me a voice. I appreciate your platform and so many great speakers on the panel. I had a question, but my thought now after hearing the gentleman who was before me speak, I'm now going to put a small submission and then I'll ask my question. First of all, I believe all the Rwandan elite need to be held accountable when it comes to the Congo situation. We had Claude who mentioned James Kabarebe. We've had many, sanction going toward the Rwandan elite, the refinery, and also the members of the army. You know, when you speak with the enemy within, who is truly an enemy within? We had James Kabarebe, who his history can be traced back to Uganda, fighting alongside Museveni of Uganda. His history can also be traced to Rwanda, fighting alongside the Ingotani to overthrow the Habyarimana regime. We also can trace him in Congo in 1996, and then also after that, been appointed as a member of Congolese military and intelligence. So, who is truly an enemy within in Congo? Why are we afraid of saying Rwanda is an enemy of Congo? Of Congo. Why are we afraid of saying that the Tutsi supremacist regime, which had the Yima Plain Empire to conquer the entire Congo and also to insert division amongst Congolese and have a balkanization of Congo for their own Yima Tutsi empire benefit? Why aren't we afraid of saying that? My question to the panel and many panelists here is, why time after time again we are putting development before people when it comes to the Congo situation? I would love someone to answer me, either one of the panel or the panelists or anybody, even in the comment section. Thank you so much for allowing me to have a say on your panel. By the way, I'm a Congolese woman from the eastern of Congo, and my people have hardly been greatly impacted by the issue. Many of them are residing in refugee camp other than Rwanda for over 30 years now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, girl from Fiji. So please, we should take note of her question. She raised a poser. Before I call the speakers to respond to that, I don't know if our co-convener Yanda, she has some question. Are you here? Are you here to ask a question? Think. Yeah. Dakore?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so far so good. I think we've actually explored the complex dynamics of economic interest, just like the last female, the female, would I call her lady? I did not really quite get her name. She's a Congolese. You know, we've actually explored the economic interest, armed conflict, and then of course the international responses. I think we can actually go deeper by translating our discussion into something tangible, more like an action to promote peace, stability, and the prosperity of the people in Rwanda. Because I know we Africans, if there's anything we are really much good at, is complain. We are really much good at it, but I think we can actually go deeper.
Congo.
Yes, thank you. So we can actually go more deeper for stability. And then from what the lady actually stated, the one from Congo, she said, why do we put development before the people? And if we go back to what everyone had been saying, I think there is an undertone of the enemy within. And yes, we need to answer that question. Who are the enemies within? Are they Africans against Africans? Or are they external forces against Africans? I think these are the questions we need to really explore and why we draft that policy to know the way forward. Thank you.
Alrighty.
Thank you, Dr. Please, Cloud, can you hold all your thoughts? Just take notes. I think Ayanda is back. Ayanda, please, can you ask your question so that they can respond to it at once before we move on to next stage?
Okay, I will take this direct to Cloud. I want to understand, how did the assassination of Patrick Lumumba shape Congo's path and current instability? Let's take it back from the beginning. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm here. I can hear you. Sorry, I was still on mute.
I think there are other questions. He will respond everything as the time goes. So, are you through with your question? Yeah.
No. Okay, do we first ask questions, they answer later? That's how I was addressing.
Yes. You can.
Okay.
They want to answer this first setup because the other question before yours. So they will respond to it. Then,
okay,
if the other
I'll follow up with my own questions when we're done with that, if you don't mind, because I have a lot of. I want to have a conversation, you know.
Okay, they can go ahead.
Yes, thank you.
Alrighty. So I noted three things. I want to start with Komi Joko's question or submission about Africa's diaspora. I think, and this is very brief, I 100% agree that when we talk about Pan-Africanism and we talk about Africans, we cannot forget Africa's sixth region, which is the diaspora. Africa's descendants who are all over the world, mostly, of course, in the US and South America and the Caribbean. That is an important, those are important sisters and brothers who are part of this global struggle that, one of, I know Kambale mentioned capitalism, but the other is the white supremacy ideology, white supremacist ideology that values, does not value dark-skinned people. So that's an important, and also just a reminder that even in the struggle for independence, the diaspora, people who were not born on the African continent or hadn't for generations, their families and ancestors had been removed from the African continent, were a part of and actually the start of the struggle for independence. Also, in addition to that part, it's the fact that even today, when we look at what is happening with the US threatening Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traore, a lot of the outspoken people who are pushing back and people who also have leverage to push back, they're based in a variety of parts of there's of course on the African continent, there are Africans born in Africa who are in the diaspora, and then there are diaspora people who are descendants of enslaved Africans in America, in the Caribbean and South America, who are all resisting on this. We have to have them all included in the struggle for liberation for Africa, and Congo is the heart. It happened even during the anti-apartheid movement. The anti-apartheid movement was global. And in parts in the diaspora, there were very strong movements there. So that is an important component of building solidarity, as I want to go back to the question of solidarity. And then the next question was from a girl from Fizi. And if you are from Fizi in Congo, I want to first of all really extend my condolences, because I know your community is one of the communities that have been greatly affected by the invasions of Congo by Uganda and Rwanda. And your question was, why do we put development ahead of people's lives? I started speaking on it when I said the white supremacist ideology, and Kambale spoke about it when it comes to capitalism. And it also goes to the story that Kambale told, which many of us have experienced with people all over the world, but especially for some reason in West Africa, where you meet people and they are like, they praise Kagame. They're like, hey, Kagame is an amazing, and this isn't confined to West Africa only. It's East Africa, Southern Africa. There's that also, but it's the word is awakening to actually what is happening. The people, the part of it is, I think, it's the media and the way the stories are told, and the fact that stories are not the stories when they're told, they don't include the people who are directly affected, and they are told generally from people who are profiting from the conflict. So one of the reasons why the Congo story has not been told the way it needs to be told, and most of the world would probably take a stance against it if they understood, is because you've got multinational corporations that are benefiting from the exploitation of the Congo, and these multinational corporations are also sponsors of a lot of the traditional corporate media, and a lot of the narratives are driven by corporate media. And then you also have kingmakers like the Bill Clintons and the Tony Blairs, and all of these influential figures that have pushed images of serious human rights abusers like Paul Kagame and Yoweri Museveni as the beacon of hope of Africa, the visionary leaders of Africa. Madeleine Albright, who was Secretary of State in the U.S., lavish praise on Kagame, Museveni, and Meles Zenawi of Ethiopia. And one thing they all have in common, they all came through mass murder, and they very repressive and invaded their neighbors. And so we have to always include the voices of the people in order for the world to understand. But I also know that there is an amount of a percentage of the people that we're never going to reach, because for them, as long as someone can protect their privilege, or offer them some amount of privilege, or they think that this does not affect them, they don't care. We also have to share the story of how every single one of us is connected to the Congo by the technology that we use. The tech revolution and the green revolution, and almost every revolution that's, all these development revolutions that happened in the past, in the present, are all tied to Congo's minerals. And I think when people understand that, hey, I am a consumer of what is happening in the Congo, and children are being enslaved, 10, 11, 12-year-olds are being enslaved in the Congo for this. Little girls are being raped in order to displace people so that these mines can be taken over by Congo's neighbors. I think people will take a stand. It took a long time to fight against the apartheid regime in Africa, and it's gonna take.
That's that trick my uncles, man.
It's gonna take.
Make my uncles
I think
happy
we
like
need
that.
to mute. We have a participant that needs to be muted. Okay, thank you. And this is also going to take a global effort. So I think I've spoken for too long. I will leave the question of Lumumba to Kambale. He can answer that along with the other questions that I've touched on. I don't want to hog the mic.
Baba Raf Bello Fadile, you ask a question and you say, who killed Lumumba? And who killed Hammarskjöld? The same element that killed Lumumba is the same element that shot down the plane in Rwanda in 1994, killing 2 African head of states and starting the Rwandan genocide. So if you want to find out who killed Lumumba, right? I'm talking about the ideological element that caused that death.
I know. I was saying the enemy within. I know. I wrote my PhD thesis on the Congo crisis, so I know.
The reason why I said that is because you mentioned that Congolese have to address it, the enemy within. We assume that the enemy has a nationality, and that nationality is Congolese. And there is a lawyer in New York who helped me understand the Congo. Like, I used to work for a law firm when I was in New York City. And she's an American lawyer. She has ground in Latin America. And I've spoken to her like for 3-4 years about the Congo because we were building cases. There were a few cases against Paul Kagame in the US, by the way. Most people don't even know that, right? So we've been building cases against him. And I will go to a law firm and I'll break down the situation. And she was always telling me, the situation is very complex. I don't understand. And one day she calls me into her office. She say, Kambale, I got it. I understand the Congo now. I said, what do you mean? I said, have you ever watched the movie Godfather? And at the time she asked me that question, I never watched the movie Godfather. So she gave me a homework. She told me, go home, watch the movie Godfather, and tomorrow we are going to talk about it. So I didn't watch one. I watched all 3 of them because I was trying to understand what she meant. So the next day in the office, when we were discussing, I said, what did you get from it? So I talked to her superficially about what the movie was about, Al Pacino's, he was a great actor, they had this mafia network. And she said to me, in the United States, they had a very big issue with the mafia. And they introduced a law that's called RICO, right? And the RICO was introduced to go after the accountants of the mafia leaders, because it was always very hard to actually find the blood of the mafia leader. Like, he wasn't the one killing. Even his second in command was not the one killing. But they always killed people, but they could not catch them. So, but the way most of the mafia leaders were arrested in the US was not on criminal charges, was on tax evasion, by the way, right? So they found the accountant, they put charges on them, and they created the RICO circle. And then through that, they could charge the mafia leader with 50 years or 100 years, whatever the year they'll give him, on tax evasion, knowing that they were taking them out of commission. And she said, that's what's happening. There is a mafia network in your country, Kambale. I said, what do you mean? And then she says, when you think about the Italian mafia, right? The Italian mafia, they don't look at themselves as Italian. It's a family in Sicily. And a family in Sicily is connected to another family in the Bronx, New York, to another family in France, to another family in Las Vegas. So they've built a mafia network where they know each other. They may carry an Italian passport, but they're not Italian. They may carry a US passport, but they are not American. They actually operate in the mafia network, because she now understood the lady mentioned earlier, James Kabarebe. For most people on this call, they're not understanding what that lady said from Fizi, right? We spend a lot of time in the situation in the Congo that we take this information for granted. Both Claude and the lady of Fizi shared very valuable information. They say that the current president of Rwanda, right, was a Ugandan military officer. Then Claude added that James Kabarebe, who's today the Rwandan Minister of Regional Cooperation, in 1997 was the Congolese Army Chief of Staff. And before, he was also in Uganda. So to understand it, we are talking about people committing crimes. One day they are Ugandans, one day they are Rwandans, one day they are Congolese. So if we don't study what has happened in the Congo from 96 to now, we will believe that removing Kabila from power and replacing it with Tshisekedi changes the situation. So the question now is, what is the mafia network in the Congo that we must dismantle, that Congolese?
It's like we've lost Mr. Kambale.
I think I can finish the thought.
Okay.
The mafia in the Congo, and if he comes back, I'll yield back. But what we have, we can tie it all together, starting with the election in Uganda in 1981, where Museveni lost and started a war. And then he recruited Rwandan exiles that included Paul Kagame and many current Rwandan officers, a lot of generals like General James Kabarebe, for example, who was recently and surprisingly sanctioned by the U.S. So you have those guys. The chain goes. They were part of Uganda. Then Kagame became the chief military intelligence in Uganda, was on a mission in the US when the invasion started, and then he went to lead the invasion in Rwanda, then fought for 4 years, took over Rwanda, and then Museveni and Kagame teamed up and they invaded Congo. These countries have not only invaded Congo, but South Sudan has been invaded by Uganda. You have the occupation of Rwandan troops in Central African Republic. You have them in Darfur. In Sudan. We had them in Sudan. We had them in Haiti, and now we have them in Mozambique against the Mozambican people's voices. So. Then Kambale, I was continuing your thought, tying everything back from Uganda's war to Rwanda's war to currently what's happening in the Congo. If you're able to continue, you can proceed. Otherwise, I'm going to finish the thought with the fact that now we refer to them as criminals without borders. We have Doctors Without Borders. We have Reporters Without Borders. We also have Criminals Without Borders. At one point, after the invasion of the Congo, remember I said James Kabarebe was once an officer in Uganda's military, then a rebel in Rwanda, then an officer in Rwanda's military. And by the way, I have spoken to two of Paul Kagame's former bodyguards directly. And in their testimony, James Kabarebe was one of the leaders of the shooting of the plane that led to the genocide. Then he was one of the leaders of the invasion of Congo. Then he was installed as Congo's military chief of staff. So he was an officer in Uganda, officer in Rwanda, officer in Congo. When Congo's leadership said, no, we don't want Rwanda's occupation, they started another invasion. He went back and became Rwanda's Minister of Defense. In 2012, when M23, which we're talking about today, first introduced itself as the M23, all of these names changed. Right now, they're transitioning to the AFC. The name changes don't change the invaders. What we have now, in what we've had in 2012, there was a UN report that specifically said the M23 was led, financed, recruitment, logistics, led by General James Kabarebe, General Charles Kayonga, and General Jack Nziza, all who are Rwandans. Now, they team up with Congolese elites and other Congolese. Like right now in the M23, you have the Nangas, who is Congolese. So you now they don't have a nationality. That's what Kambale was saying. They are united by crime in Uganda, in Rwanda, and in the Congo. You also have some Congolese that are part of what these crimes that are happening in the Congo. And then you have the Congolese elites that have betrayed the people by continuing to integrate these fighters and these belligerents into the government, who turn around. The leader of the one of the leaders of the M23 right now, Colonel Nanga, was actually the leader of the election committee in 2019 when Tshisekedi became president. So the point Kambale was making was, you have a chain of criminals without borders that are the enemies within. And these enemies within are enemies within Africa. And it's not just confined to Central and East Africa, it's all over the continent. Y'all remember when ECOWAS wanted to invade the Sahel? Those are the enemies within. Those presidents that are teaming up to go and remove the Ibrahim Traores, the Alassane Ouattaras, and Tinubu in Nigeria, and Talon in Benin. We have to name them. Those are the enemies within, and for the most part, a lot of times it just happen to be among the elite of the population, or have found a way to make their way into the elite of the population by way of force and fraud. And it looks like Kambale is having audio issues, but he's I'm pretty sure I'm close to what he was presenting. And I think that covers all the questions that were asked so far. With the assassination of Lumumba, I don't know if he had finished that, but if I can just quickly summarize, once Lumumba was assassinated, and now we know that the CIA was involved in the assassination of Lumumba, and the Belgians, self-confessed about that. And once he was removed and they installed Mobutu, who also happened to be an enemy within. They installed an enemy within because he was serving Western interests. He was a CIA operative in the region, who was then replaced and removed and replaced with Kagame and Museveni. They unleashed 32 years of dictatorship and looting and plundering of Congo by the Mobutu regime. And if any of you recall, have read and followed, Mobutu's regime was also involved in facilitating logistics for the apartheid South African regime, which was supported by the US and the UK and the usual suspects in Europe. And he was locked in with them to the extent that he was helping with the logistics as South Africa was bombing, was bombing and shooting students and protesting in South Africa, children, as they were bombing neighboring countries and destabilizing Mozambique and the other African countries that were not the enemy within, were actually uniting to fight against apartheid in South Africa. So I want to stop it there because the impact of losing Lumumba and his vision basically created the situation that we have now of exploitation and occupation of the Congo.
Thank you very much, Claude, for holding forth. I must say, I've been trying behind the scene to try and reach. We are talking about Lumumba, and there's another Lumumba that should have been. I know he came here early on, say he'll be back. He came back temporarily. I didn't know when he logged out. Again, I've tried to reach him, but he's not picking. I've also reached the PA, who has also tried to reach out to him. So I don't know if he will be here before we round up. We've actually gone far. Thank you very much, Claudia. And now I want us, the way forward, there's the aspect I think we've not, I noted it down, not really, the issue of the low media attention and coverage narrative, why is there so much limited international media coverage on Congo and other conflicts now compared to other conflicts elsewhere, compared to, let's say, Israel and Gaza and Russia, Ukraine, even South Africa has to even take the lead in the Gaza-Israel issue. And funny enough, the deadliest conflict in the last 10 years is the most underreported, and it's in Africa, Ethiopia-Tigray war, where almost 300,000 were killed, and everywhere was silent, still silent. And the same thing is going on now. So I want to ask, and what do you think is the issue? What role should African media play in reframing the narrative? And one of it is what we're actually doing here, trying to put head together, but it needs to be amplified more. And how can civil society and diaspora movements, just like you and that's the sixth region you're talking about, amplify awareness and advocacy? So I think this area, I feel I need contribution. Let's put it together. What do we do, both from the speakers and even from the floor?
My brother Senator.
Okay, you're back, brother.
You are doing it already. You put together this panel. I gave you a hard time, you know that, but you didn't give up,
yes.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
So my point is, we need more courageous journalists to be the people's journalists. And in the situation of the Congo, I think people have a challenging time in accepting that you have to do research. You see journalism, how it's become lazy, right? Especially now with ChatGPT, right? People don't want to do the research, right? But we owe it to the African people to study, right? Like, I have to be very humble and say, I'm talking to Nigerians to understand what is happening in the Niger Delta, because I'm not from Nigeria, but I want to know what is happening there, right? I want to understand why it started from Niger Delta to Boko Haram. People who've lived in that area for hundreds of years, all of a sudden we're talking about this, right? So if you start seeing this type of contradiction and you start thinking about, what do I do as a journalist in my country to tell the story of my own people? It's the same thing that you will do for the Congo or for any other oppressed people. Like, start thinking about power. Who holds power? And for the interest of whom? In the Congo today, we know theoretically the people have power, but they don't control that power right now, right? It's in the hands of a few. So if it's in the hands of the few, how do we now tell that story? It's gonna take courageous people like yourself and others to say, it's taken 3 decades. Let's tell the story of the people. And I heard when I came back, I heard some of the submission that Claude has given is right on target to what I wanted to share about understanding the mafia network in DRC. But given, unfortunately, I may have limited time, my connection is acting a bit funny. I want to make sure I make an appeal, especially to a Pan-Africanist. Today, right, we are confused about who a Pan-Africanist is. And we should have a baseline understanding, an agreement about who a Pan-Africanist is. But I can also say who is not a Pan-Africanist to make it even easier. If we have an African leader where we have evidence that millions of people have died due to their actions, you can't call that leader a Pan-Africanist. If we have irrefutable evidence that there is another African leader encroaching on national sovereignty of another country, and I won't even talk about Paul Kagame, I'm going to speak for the president of Cote d'Ivoire, Ouattara, right, who actually sent his troops. They were caught in Mali, they were plotting a coup, and they had to negotiate the return of Ivorian soldiers, right? When you see that, you won't call Alassane Ouattara of Cote d'Ivoire a Pan-Africanist. So when we start having this basic understanding of who is not a Pan-Africanist, and we say now, for Pan-Africanism to succeed, and we read Kwame Nkrumah's Africa Unite, and we start thinking about the plan that he had for a United States of Africa, we forget that the capital of the United States of Africa, according to Kwame Nkrumah, was Kinshasa in his book. And this country is not at peace, right? And the last one, and I'm sure you've seen that in the comments, and I'm really hoping, as you said, Professor Lumumba, whom I say again, I respect, his intellectual participation into African issues has been important. But I do know that on the question of the region, as you can see, many people are waiting to hear his submission, right? But I would rather put an appeal to him. He carries an important name. He carries the name of Patrice Lumumba, the first democratically elected leader of the Congo, who said that Congo should be free for the Congolese people and for the benefit of the African continent. It will be important for him, especially for the sake of the name that he carries, that for the remaining days of his life, that he does everything possible for him to bring peace to the DRC. Doesn't matter who he has affinity with, right? The fact that he has the name Patrice Lumumba, right? PLO Lumumba, he said it himself, it comes from Patrice Lumumba. He should do everything in his power to reclaim that name as Patrice Lumumba, to fight for peace and stability in DRC, and to join Congolese in the struggle to bring about justice and peace in that country. And that's all I could say. I know that a lot of people are very anxious, and I was looking forward to that. And I think we can continue on the discussion. I just wanted to make sure that I share that before I have other technical challenges, that we Congolese are thankful for what he's done for the African continent, and we hope that he join us for true justice for DRC, and that he fight to really take that name that he has to fight for peace and stability in DRC.
Yeah, I also want to add, Kambale, on the media question. There's a lot of times the news that we've gotten out of the Congo has been when a Western journalist asks a government official here and a government official there, and they bring a story together, and they're like, yeah, we've got, they both sided, and now they've got a story. But the people who are directly affected are not actually, those voices are not included. So I think, again, platforms like this, allowing someone like Girl from Fizi, like I could say, Fizi is one of the places that are affected even now. Like South Kivu is under siege. If she's from Fizi, I'm not 100% sure, but if she's from Fizi, her family is like in danger right now. And so I do think that it's important to have this type of, not only this forum, but to amplify it. And I think maybe I'll go ahead and just kick a shout out to HMG Studio for doing some of that work, making themselves available at the last minute to be able to broadcast this to a wider audience. I think a lot more wider audience needs to know what is really happening versus consuming all the news from Western media. There is a reason why corporate media has not been reporting on this for a long time, and it's because they have corporate sponsors. And the corporate sponsors are some of these multinationals, and they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to bite the hand that feeds them. But we as Africans, the 5 regions on the continent and region 6 in the diaspora, have the work to continue to amplify the voices of the people and to continue to push to make sure that the facts are known, because that will allow for people to actually make decisions and take action based on correct information. So I'm really grateful for a platform like this and everybody that's doing organizing. One of the things Kambale mentioned earlier, like I said, I think there's lack of information on the continent. And we have to build on the fact that Africans have credibility. We don't need to get the news from non-Africans in order for it to be valid. And so I wanted to add that in terms of media. Make sure when you hear the story, these stories, now you're a witness. We have, hundreds of people watching live. Those are witnesses. I think on one of the platforms I saw like 500 something people watching. Every one of the 500 is a witness. So now as a witness, you have a responsibility to share. And so now we build an audience of what is happening here is going global. And so, we start small and we continue to expand.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Claudia. Thank you, Mr. Kambele. So once again, I want to really apologize to a lot of people who were expecting to hear from Prof. I'm really sad because Prof, the second edition of Geopolitics was there. In fact, he was one of the first guests to confirm availability. And he was here at the start, just at, he said, okay, we should give him like an hour. So I don't know what happened. Though some comments were saying he doesn't want to face the cloud, but it's always good to have differing opinion on issues. You look at issues from different perspectives. So we have loved to hear from his perspective. So I don't.
Okay, sorry about Prof.
Hold on first. So as it stands now, I don't know if Prof will be back because efforts to reach him has not. Now we are going to, after the media, we're going to look at the way forward, some solution issues. So I'm sure Ayanda may have some questions to ask. So Ayanda can go.
I think you are muted if you are speaking.
Ayanda is on mute.
Ayanda, can you unmute yourself, please?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, Prof, I'd like to apologize. We've been having serious network issues. So probably on our next session, please. And yeah, can we go ahead with questions if you don't mind, or we run out of time? Hello? Hello?
Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. Go ahead, can you hear me? We are listening, we're waiting for you. Can you go ahead, ask your question?
Okay, Comrade Claude, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, sorry, I'm having network issues. As you can see, I don't have Light Africa, you know. So how do we strengthen African geopolitical capacity, diplomacy, negotiations, and all the regional security mechanism? What's your take on that?
The question is, how do we advance it?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, the question is, how do we advance
How do you
African
strengthen-
politics?
How do you strengthen the African geopolitical capacity, your diplomacy, all the negotiations, and regional security mechanism?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the very first part of your question. How do I sense it, or
How
How
can
do
we
you strengthen
African?
how do we
geopolitical-
strengthen it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think for me, the formula is empowering the people. I'm looking at the example of what's happening in the Sahel. I am personally not in favor of military leading civilians, because military men are not trained to lead civilians. They're trained to lead people who are in a structure and to do things as they are told. That's not how civilians live. However, we have seen the changes that have taken place in the Sahel, and I hope they are sustained. But I think one of the things that we need to do, Ayanda, is really leveraging the resources on the continent. That's one of the strengths of the continents, and which is also part of the curse, because the enemy within continues to strengthen in order to help with the exploitation. However, I think starting with making sure that the resources serve the people gives us the leverage to actually then be able to face off diplomatically, and make deals that are actually fair to the people. That's one of the things. The other thing I think is to empower the people to where the people's voices are so important that the enemies within cannot afford to not follow the people's voices. And if they don't, that revolutions will occur. I think we have to look.
Cut you off, but do you think it's time for revolution in Africa? Stop all the talks and actually, because I believe it starts with you, between me and you, and the youth needs to be, as you said, all the talk. Can we just start the revolution without actually getting physical? But the movement should just carry on. I think we should push that and don't turn away from feel like you are being a rebellious. Let's talk about these things openly now. We've got into the time. See, look at our brother here in Burkina Faso yesterday, and we're not saying anything. We're mute. We're just busy going all social media crazy, but we're not actually facing and stating things that are very important. Can we just move?
Yeah, I agree. That was my second point. The people have to revolt so that the people's power and revolution has phases, right? It starts in the hearts and the minds of the people. So the people, we've got to make sure the work that we're doing is to help people understand the power that we have as individuals. And the thing that we really need on the African continent, as you say, it is a revolution, real change, dramatic and radical change from the status quo, because what we have seen is that a lot of the African elite has been an enemy within that is helping the exploitation of Africans, that is sacrificing African lives in order to enrich themselves and entrench themselves into power. And I think there is power in solidarity. And what I'm saying here is we're having these conversations, and somebody who is part of the who's a part of the elite or supports some of these elite enemies within will come to us and say, let's just say, I'm talking about Burkina Faso. They will say, well, you're not Burkinabe, you can't talk about Burkina Faso. But no, that's not, or you're not from Ethiopia, you can't talk about Ethiopia. I mean, there's a genocide going on in Ethiopia right now. Like the education, letting people know and understand, hey, these are the things that are happening, in solidarity among the people who are affected across the globe is going to get us to where we need to be. And like I said, I use the example of Frederick Douglass. who was sold into slavery at 7 years old. He revolted at every stage of his life, including when he was made ambassador to Haiti, and the US sent him and they asked him to basically make a deal that was exploiting the Haitians, and he resigned. So we, in every one of our capacities, we have to bring our forces together, but we also have to be based in the truth. We have to center the people. It has to be about the people and the masses. And we have to watch out for, as Thomas Sankara said, do we want to serve ourselves champagne and wine with our friends, or do we want the masses to get water? So we need to team and band with the people who are serving water to the masses, or who are getting the masses to get the water that is needed. That is the source of life. So, and I'll stop it there.
Okay, that was great.
Okay, I think, yeah. Someone want to ask a Cass, if you can hear me, can you unmute yourself and ask question?
Hello, Cass.
Cass, if you're raising your hand up. Okay, I think I can't see him again.
Network.
Okay. Maybe network issue. So yeah, do you have any other question?
Just one last question, my brother, my prophet Kambale.
Okay.
Is it still there?
I think there is this B get bouquet. No, somebody raise up your hand. B get bouquet. Can you unmute and
Yes. Just wanted to quickly say a few things about the conversation today. I think the speakers did well in explaining the need for justice in the Congo. I think it's one of the things that our Congolese brothers and sisters will continue to push on and should continue to push on, and make sure that their loved ones who were brutally taken from this earth are acknowledged and receive justice. This is something some Rwandans never received. There are some Rwandans that lost their loved ones due to these conflicts that never received justice. So for me, I'm hopeful and hope that the Congolese will continue to push and ask for justice, because it's happened in the past where justice was not served. And I think it will be really difficult for the Congolese society to move forward if justice does not get served. So I just wanted to commend the speakers who spoke here today and say, hey, continue. And also wanted to speak really quickly on the question that was asked about why there isn't widespread media coverage on this. I think it's because some of this conversation causes dissonance for some people. You know, it's hard to believe that a country that experienced a tragic loss in 1994 could be involved in causing tragedy in another country. So I think that part causes dissonance for a lot of people. And so it kind of does not bring about clarity for them to be able to speak about these things. And so it's within forums like this, you hear individuals talking about what they experienced and what's happened. And I do think that once that dissonance goes away, people will then start talking about it. But I think for certain individuals, it can be in that sense that they're like, wow, what do you mean? And for some people who are very courageous, they will go back and start doing research and look into what somebody might have said that causes dissonance, And they will be able to be like, oh, wow, I did not know that this also occurred. I did not know that this conflict was happening. So for the host who hosted this forum, I think it's great. And I thank you for having hosted this forum. And I hope that others do host these types of forums so that people can spread the word, because there is a need to explain that, you know, a country that experienced a very hard tragedy is also involved in causing a tragedy in another country. So those were my comments, and just wanted to give shout out to the speakers. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, B. Daughter of Congo, raise up the hand. Daughter of Congo. We can have the floor.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for allowing me on your platform. Thank you very much, Senator, for the work you are doing for Africa, not only for Africa, but also for Congo. That's really appreciated coming from a Congolese. I don't know if it's a question, but I want to ask, because often when Congolese talk about their cause, people want to ask them, why don't you, how do I put this? I'm thinking in French, I'm sorry. Why don't you point to your government? You only point outside. I don't know. It's like a person who has experienced rape, and, you know, they show their, the person who raped them, and you keep on questioning them. I always feel like when a Congolese is talking about the Congolese cause, many people always ask them, why are you always pointing Rwanda? I don't think Congolese, don't wait for a Congolese person to go, and we all know that behind Rwanda there's somebody, but I don't see an American coming to rape my mother or my daughter. I see a Rwandese doing that. I will not mention the French, who I don't see them. They are using the Black people. They are using the African brother. And people want me to call these people brothers. I don't know. I've reached to a point where I was just seeing it this way, but now hate has grown within me, because I am tired of seeing what is going in my country, seeing what my people are going through. And it's always us being accused. Why are you blaming others? We just don't wake up and blame those people. We blame them because they are concerned. How do you want me to see these Rwandese? Instead, you are a civilian just like me. But when I tell you about what is happening in Congo, you defend Kagame. You know it's well inside of you that Kagame has a hand on this. You still defend M23. And you still try to say they are not. Everything is fine in Goma, but we are seeing people people displaced, people being killed, children. I have no parents. We are talking about very young children. We are talking about babies. We are talking about old women. We are talking about very aged people running away, being displaced. They don't have their homes, being killed, to have their villages taken over. But when you tell people, they want you. Yes, we know that we do have a failed government, but does that give an excuse for other people to come and kill us on top of what we are going through with our government? Does that give them the right to do so? We know that. It doesn't mean when we stand and talk about Congo, talk about what the outside world is doing to Congo, that we forget. We also do blame our government, but it's not because my government is doing that, then I will sit there and watch other people doing this. We need to work together. We only talk about African unity when it's economical. We've signed, our government goes sign paper. I read the Declaration of Principles on where they're talking about our millions of debt. Nobody's mentioning them, but they are mentioning our minerals. They are mentioning our parks. Those are the only things they're mentioning. Who is thinking about the Congolese people, the innocent babies who've been raped? They knew nothing in this world, but they have been raped. They haven't experienced. I have sisters, cousins. They know nothing other than war. Since they were born, all they know is war. Congolese people want peace. Have we ever benefited from the minerals? We haven't. All we need is peace. And that's what we are asking. And the world needs to stop asking us to only blame our government. We do not blame Rwanda because we love Rwanda. We do not. Congo has never invaded any country. Congo's only sin was to open its borders to Rwanda. We helped people who needed help. And today, the same people are killing us. And when you tell that to the world, they say you keep on blaming, you do not take accountability. That's very wrong. That is very wrong. And we hear that from many African mouths. This is so hurtful. We cannot ask for unity when you cannot fight together with the Congolese people. You cannot ask Congolese to unite with other Africans when everybody is turning their back from Congolese people. It doesn't work like that. We have never done this to people. Congolese people have welcomed. You find Nigerians, Angolans. Everybody feels welcome. Why do we only have that border, the Rwandan border? Why is it only Rwanda? Why only them? You guys need to ask yourself the question. We have 9 countries bordering Congo, but why is it always Rwanda? We are not talking about. You're talking about millions of people. No, it's 20 million of people that we've lost. 20 million, erasing a whole village to take over. A whole village, renaming the villages, taking people, displacing people to take their villages. That is wrong. Africa, you need to wake up and fight to fight with Congo. This is real. You have people here following you, and it's closer to their hearts because they have families there. It's not just what you're seeing on videos. No, these are real life. Yesterday in Kibero, children, we see videos being displaced. No shoes, nothing, no parents, no mother, nothing. These are young children who want to see that. What has Congo done to the world? What has Congo done to the world? If we had the same mentality, Congo has the capability of invading Rwanda. But killing people is not a Congolese mentality. They brought it to Congo. That's not Congolese. Don't ask us to take accountability when we are the ones being killed. No, we can't do that. I'm so sorry, but thank you very much for the time.
It's not time to talk much. It's time for movement and unite as Africans. These people, these French people, I'll mention them. These Americans are the ones conniving doing this to us. Countries, even the Rwandans are victims of the greedy Western world. We must actually hit the bullet and not run away from the truth. Rwanda is being used by the same French, but say, can we start from there first? But we need to unite. We need to unite, speak the same language, we feel you. So it begins with you, hence we are in this platform. Let's just have such different ways of expressing ourselves. But then again, there's gotta be a movement we start where we can take Africa to another. The Africa we want must start showing results.
And thank you very much. Can you guys please let's drop candles on the comments for the people of Congo, please? I'm just asking that, and I'm gone. Thank you. Let's please drop candles on the comments for the people of Congo.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Daughter of Congo. I like your perspective. You brought a kind of emotion and the human to actually know that these are human beings we are talking about. I remember when we had our last edition that was on Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and we could see the raw emotion from the people that were actually affected. Someone spoke on behalf of the women and children, so we could see. And sometimes I watch that's why I was asking African media, why is it that if you watch Al Jazeera, You could see how they are putting human face to their report. Every Gazan that is killed has a name, has a face, has a family. But in this situation, it's not like it's just reported as a statistics. So these are kind of narratives I think we have to begin to change. I'm sorry for what is really happening. So, and it's high time okay, at least we have started brainstorming across Africa. I know when I made this invitation, I was reading through the comments, the tweet exchange and Cloud Bookers. People are saying, but Rwandan, why are you speaking on Congo? We are Africans. We should see ourselves as one. It should affect Congo, should affect me as a Nigerian, affect Ayanda as a South African, and the same thing goes on. So now, Cass has been raising up his hand. He's supposed to speak before. I think maybe network. So Cass, if you can hear me, can you quickly, before we go to Olu Ogulana, Cass, can you unmute yourself and make your contribution? Hello, Cass. I think maybe it's not. Olu, can you go ahead? Maybe we'll come back to Cass.
Yeah, thank you very much for giving me this platform. I've been listening for the past 2 hours, and I see emotion. I see people passionate about their appeal, but beyond that, we are in the best position to tell our own story truthfully and powerfully, because no one else is going to speak for us. And the world will not say for us. The global power pursue their own interests, often at the expense of the freedom and unity of Africa. Nelson Mandela said one thing: education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And that's what you people are doing today. And that's what all of us have been doing. The crisis in Congo reflects not just political instability, but a failure of knowledge among leaders, citizens, and international community. If everyone in the United States, in United Kingdom, in China, if they understand that every phone in their hand, every bit of their laptop, everything, you're going to see pieces from Congo there, they're going to take action. And I can tell you that the same playbook that was used during apartheid can still be used with these. Why some people lobby, get in touch with the international community, continue educating people. I would love a situation where some of these NGOs rising from here send a kind of passionate letter, open letter to the world leaders. The reality is that power will not respect power, except one is superior or one is equal. So sending that passionate appeal to the world, and also with threat as well, but what may likely happening if we neglect that. I mean, people have been raising the issue, why has they have been focused on Palestine crisis? It's simply because they have people in parliament, speaking for them. It's simply because they have people all over the world exposing that, just like what we are doing now. So many actors operate out of ignorance or indifference, and power only respect is equal or superior, as I've mentioned earlier on. If Kwame Nkrumah is alive today, like one of the speakers has been saying, oh, Kwame Nkrumah is going to do this, is going to do that, probably they will not be able to do anything. Azikiwe will not be able to do anything because of the greed, which of course we've seen today. Who is speaking to Kagame? Why is Obasanjo sitting down? Who is talking to what the equals or those who can put pressure on him? So we are powerless if we are not doing that. Our greatest weapon is the truth. Share through education, mobilization, and advocacy. I mean, just as the world united to end apartheid in South Africa, we must now rally global attention to the Congo. Someone just mentioned it when I was in high school in the early 80s. The slogan, apartheid is a crime against humanity. At this point in time, we must have very good slogan that will move around in Africa, among the African diaspora. So the same strategy rooted in solidarity, justice, and truth, for apartheid can dismantle the silence surrounding this crisis in Congo. So if you want lasting change, we need to start educating our people, control our narrative, and demand justice from Congo to Lagos, Accra to Johannesburg. The responsibility is ours. If you do not stand up for ourselves, no one. Forget about those who are speaking around and calling themselves Pan-Africanists. Forget about all those things. People must come together and take power from all those people who are taking the advantage of people, for their own, narrow agenda. Thank you. My name is Soludari Ogunlana.
Thank you very much, Olu Ogunlana. I appreciate your contribution. I don't know if Cass is ready now. He's out again. So Mordecai Mbongi.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, please.
So thank you very much. I was dropping back and forth. I don't know what happened with my network. So but I wanted to commend all the panelists and praise the good work you're doing. The host and everybody. I will call the names of three people. For example, Claude and Kambale and the senator and any other person involved in this work that I didn't call the name. This is what needs to be done on a permanent basis. Africans need to know about what causes the downfall of Africa and what causes that Africa is stalling instead of being the engine that will drive the world today. And you have the DRC, which is in the center of Africa, and Africa is in the center of humanity. You cannot have DRC undergoing such crisis for 3 decades and not having Africans standing and fighting for this cause as considering it to be like African issue. So we agree that we have such a certain number of Africans standing as you and this platform, and agree we have sponsored Pan-Africanists with a very good platform given to them to be praising a dictator such as Kagame, and Kagame having had the agenda Western wrote this chat here. Operation Gladio, for those who can both see online, is public material that talks about how Europeans, after the Second World War, created that secret military organization so they can prevent themselves to be invaded by Russia. But it ended up by being included to CIA's missions, and that organization is one that led to organize the assassination of Patrice Emery Lumumba in DRC, and yet they've been using it for other African leaders and other all the eliminated the leaders in the world. So today that we come to a conclusion that we have to come together and stand up, but please always remember that among us, those traitors, those infiltrators are along, and if we do not stand firm and bold to choosing which are the true African children who stands for the African cause, we will fail again, because Michael Gorbachev was, prepared.
It's like we've lost Mordecai. Network can be terrible at times. So now we want to welcome the speakers, maybe to make their closing remarks, except if there is, let them make their closing remark. The floor will still be open for anybody who wants to make their contribution. So I want to call on Claudia to make a closing remark. Then after that,
can you hear me now?
Oh, Cass, you're back?
Yes, I couldn't speak earlier because I didn't know, but then I contacted the daughter of Congo. She told me what to do exactly.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so my submission today, I know that you were asking if there is any comment. I mean, for me, all I wanted to say, a bit like what Claude was actually saying earlier, and the daughter of Congo, and also the girl from Fizi. We all know now that Kagame is not a Pan-Africanist, that what many people would have thought he was, because this person is developing his country by actually invading a sovereignty of my country, and killing about 18 to 20 millions of Congolese for him to actually develop his country. And I think that as an African, that should not be something that one could say that we can take Kagame as an example of a good leader. Is not a good leader for what I can see. Recently, 15 members of the Security Council have actually confirmed that Rwanda and his army, RDF, is actually in my country. The M23 is actually a surrogate army of RDF, of Rwanda. So it means that Congolese is not dealing with internal military or militia that's actually claiming the eastern part of Congo. Is actually Kagame. We are at war with Kagame. But if you ask the reason of why Kagame should invade us, there's no reason. Congo never invaded Rwanda even 1 second. We've never done that. But Congo has been invaded by Kagame and Rwanda about 5 times. The M23 name keeps on changing. We had FDLR, then we had CNDP, then we had RCD Goma, now we had M23. It's like every time it's changing names, and in the process, lots of people are being killed. Children are being left to motherless, fatherless. Women are being raped. Kids as old as 3 months are being raped, and many babies are being pounded. Pregnant women, they're actually opening their stomach to get the fetus from a pregnant woman just to create fear so that people cannot come back. Right now, people who fled their home in Bunagana went to Goma and Bukavu because of the violence and the war that erupted there. They're trying to go back to their homes only to find that Rwandese are there. So they're actually displacing my people for Rwandese to come and replace there. I am a victim myself. My father was an advisor to the Prime Minister in charge of mines. He was also killed, kidnapped, tortured, and killed. So these things is close to our heart. This violence perpetrated by Rwanda is actually close to us. So it is time for Africa to actually plead for our case to whoever, unite with us first to denounce what Rwanda is doing than to say that let us unite. There is no justice without reparation. If you want us to unite in the one spirit of Pan-Africanist, you have to urge Paul Kagame either to leave power because he's not a leader, is not a leader for Africa, it's not supposed to be a leader in Africa, because what he's actually doing is not what an African person would do. Paul Kagame is actually being used like the daughter of Rwanda said, we are not seeing the French, we are not seeing Americans, we are not seeing European Union, we are seeing Paul Kagame and his army coming to loot. We are seeing Paul Kagame in his army coming to rape. We are seeing displacement, mass displacement in my country. We are seeing refugee within their own countries. There are people who don't know nothing else apart from war. There are children who have been born because their mothers were raped by the Rwandese army. And now they've been left again motherless and fatherless, and themselves are also victims of the same people. So this hypocrisy of saying Pan-Africanism, my apology if I'm hurting somebody by saying this. As you can understand, we cannot be Pan-Africanist. We cannot unite when the reparation is not being done. Some of us are fatherless because of Rwanda. The only sin that Congo has committed is by God giving them all this wealth. We did not ask for it. Rwanda is actually our natural neighbors. We are sharing the borders, but they cannot violate like another country's sovereignty in the pretext of saying that they have somehow community in Congo who have been marginalized. We have 453 tribes in Congo. We've always been living in harmony. The people who have come to Congo, we have Nigerian, we have Angola. Angola, when they were having war, they've also come. Some of them have settled in back Congo, but we've never had any issue whatsoever with these people. But we always have problems with Rwanda. We actually welcome them in our country. Now, Paul Kagame has also created another militia group called FDLR. Because when James Kabarebe was actually an army chief in my country, in Congo, they actually did some joint military force or some agreements to actually dismantle this group. And this man said that he was satisfied because that group was eradicated. But today, Kagame is actually crossing over to my country in the pretext of coming to look for the same FDLR, when his army chief, actually, who's actually exercising today in Kigali, said that they were not FDLR. And the whole world is watching. The whole world is watching the way my people are being killed. So where is the spirit of Pan-Africanism in this, when Congolese are being killed, eradicated from their own country? Congo belongs, first of all, to Congolese. Our mineral resources, our forest, our water, our animal in the park of Virunga belongs to us. There have been 18 million. Now, when we want to unite, why are we not talking about the millions of lives that have been lost in Congo? How can there be unity if there is no reparation? We don't want to unite. Personally, I don't want to unite with Rwanda. And I will urge my people as well not to unite if there's no reparation, if there is no recognition. Rwanda has to recognize, like some other countries in Europe have recognized the colonization. If Rwanda does not recognize the killing of my people, you cannot ask us to unite with Rwanda. We will never reconcile with Rwanda. The same way we have natural borders, we will become the natural enemies, because some of us in the East are suffering. Some of us in the East cannot go back to their own homes, because in your own home, you will find a Rwandese with a gun. What can you say? They've silenced us. If you want, you can look uncovering the truth in the Congo, untold story, where Mr. Kambale Musavuli is also one of the speakers there. Then you can understand Congo. And I wanted to say, Mr. Kambale Musavuli, thank you very much for supporting my work I was doing for the deprived women in Congo in 2016. Maybe you don't remember me, but you did speak to one of the seminar that I actually organized. Thank you so very much for other speakers in the panel. Thank you for organizing this, and thank you for having me on board. There will not be any justice without a reparation. We need reparation. We need an apology. We need compensation for these families. And Kagame needs, his place is actually to be in a prison somewhere. Kagame must be arrested. For him to be accountable to the crimes that he has actually committed in Congo. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaz. That was a very passionate, commentary and input. I know the emotions are high and it's quite painful, but I know ultimately there will be reconciliation, and we are brothers. Despite what some of our leaders are doing to divide us, we are brothers, and a time will come, and what we are actually asking for or working is towards Africa unite, African unity for peace, justice. Like you said, there have to be justice. Now, I want to ask for, as a closing remark, after all this, what is the solution? Is it that these are defied solution? Initially, the East African community deployed troops to Eastern Congo. It didn't work. UN, it didn't work. South Africa Development Community sent troops. In their presence, they couldn't stop the rebels, and with the support of as their allegation. So, what is the way forward? What is the way forward? How do we bring peace to not only Congo, but in the Great Lake region? People, there's even what I'll call ticking time bomb. Burundi, the situation in Burundi has not even been talked, because there's a similar situation. Because if what is happening in Congo is not handled well, it may spiral to Burundi. And so what is the solution? Is it the solution that Qatar is trying to bring, or US is trying to bring? But for us here, we are looking at African solution to African problem. It doesn't mean that if there's some solution from external actors who have genuine interest, we will not listen. But at least charity begins at home. So, in form of concluding remarks from our speakers, and after that, if there's any other person who want to make, we need we've dissected the problem, and what is the way forward? What do we do? As I mentioned, there have been troops from East Africa community, no solution. UN, no solution. South Africa community, no solution. There have been meetings here and there, and those leaders were not even sincere enough to enforce their own rules. Now, even the leaders did not attend such meeting, and they all went to Qatar to listen. The same thing we saw in Sudan. We'll still come back to Sudan situation. So, as a closing remark, please, let's hear you before we round up, and give you some further information on our next edition.
Thank you again. Wanted to just, before I answer your question on the solution, highlight and acknowledge a number of things. One, the reason why I love gatherings like this is because it opens up for the voices of the people who are directly affected, like daughter of Congo, the sister from Fizi. You just spoke about Burundi. Fizi is very close to Burundi. And a girl from Fizi is the handle. People like Cass and others. those voices are really important because it helps as an input into what is the right thing to actually do. I also want to acknowledge earlier you called on someone to ask or to make a comment. It was actually my sister, B. Gatebuke. So I want to kick her a shout out for pointing out the fact that Rwanda gets the genocide credit. I'm not sure what credit Uganda gets, that they kind of are like left out of the narrative, but Uganda is one of the aggressors also, but Rwanda gets the genocide credit, and people don't have a hard time believing that a country that's gone through so much can do such horrible things to a much bigger, higher proportion to their neighbor, just because they have the power to do that with the support of their Western powers. Um, and there was also Brother Olu who spoke about some actions that can be taken. I think that's what takes us to the solution. But before that, there was also a number of things that came up. I think one was from Gift and somebody else, something about how do we even deal with these enemies within, knowing that we've got election fraud, ethnicity, religion, and all of these other things that underpin the politics. And all of that's going to be an input into the answer that I give you on what's the solution. And then there was another comment about why do we have so many people who are self-preserving and not willing to negotiate fairly on the global stage? All of these things are inputs into what the solution is. When it comes to Congo, you mentioned all of those talks. Those talks, as I said earlier, have not been a part of a solution since the early 80s in Uganda. These negotiations, the deployment of troops and everything, the solution for Congo is not a military solution. The solution for Congo is justice. The starting point is part of the actions that Brother Olu mentioned, which is coming together and revolting against what is actually happening and pushing for real action. And I will say, for me, as things stand right now, the short-term route to go for us is to use our voices to push for cancellation of any mineral deals that are signed between international players, between Rwanda and the global manufacturers, and between Uganda and the rest of the globe, because those are the two that are the belligerents in the Congo. The diplomatic isolation, arms embargo. Why do we not have an arms embargo on countries that have invaded their neighbor? Those are some of the things that we need to push for right now, because we can tell those talks have not worked. And I knew that they wouldn't, because we've seen this movie before many, many times. Kambale talked about, the way the mafia works. Right now, by the way, you talked about the solution in the US. I don't know if you saw that after the signing of the declaration, there was an announcement by the M23, the proxy of Rwanda's military. I did like the fact that it was Rwanda signing and not pretending that there is an M23 that isn't part of Rwanda, because there's too much evidence. We've seen too much evidence of the fact that the M23 is an extension of Rwanda's military. But the M23 put out a statement saying that whatever was signed is not something that they will abide by because it doesn't concern them. So on that point, there's already a built-in plausible deniability by Rwanda in order to escape the fact that, hey, we agreed, we were good with this agreement, but hey, that's the M23. But we know that the M23 is part of Rwanda's army. So these negotiations don't really work. We really have to go for the things that's fueling this, what's happening in the Congo, this genocide, this genocost in the Congo, is the resources. So have to really cut off any kind of resource deals, diplomatically isolate the two countries that are invading the Congo and hit them in the pocket on the foreign aid. If we, in the same way that the apartheid regime was completely isolated to the fact that South African sport teams could not participate in international competition. It needs to get to that level. Once we get it to that level, I think we will see results as far as Congo being stabilized. But in the long run, what we really need is justice for the people. You heard the voices, daughter of Congo, Cass, you heard girl from Fizi. There are millions of people like that. The people who have died in the Congo since the invasion of Congo, and the people who've been displaced are more than the whole population of Rwanda. And we have to really mobilize to get some things to hold down the enemies within. Of course, we also need to continue to educate. I think that goes to some of the questions. We have to let the world know and understand, especially our sisters and brothers on the continent and in the diaspora, that what is happening in the Congo, educate for what it really is, so that people understand and take action accordingly. Right now, there's a lot of mobilization around Ibrahim Traore, and rightfully so, because he's done right by his people. We also need to get people to revolt. We need a revolution against the dictators and the enemies within that have caused so much bloodbath on the continent. And so for me, that is the solution. It may not be a tomorrow solution, but we really have to push for those things. Arms embargo on the invaders of Congo, diplomatic isolation, and stopping of any mineral deals at a start. Those three things, and then we can go to other things. Those are my my proposed action items out of this. And then, of course, the biggest one is educate the world, educate ourselves, share information like this, let the voices be heard. Thank you so much. And Senator and your colleagues, I really, I'm grateful for the opportunity to be with you guys, Ayanda, and the other co-convener, Dakore. Thank you all so much for holding this. I think, just based on the things that we heard today, I would love for you to host another one, to host some more among, as part of this series, not in 2 years, not in a year, but in the near future. I'm really grateful that you guys are doing this work, and thank you for continuing to educate our sisters and brothers. And of course, it's a great honor to be here with my brother Kambale, even though, as you can hear, it's difficult for Congolese and Rwandans to call each other brothers at this time and sisters at this time because of just the horrible things that are going on there. And so I thank you all for giving us the time and the floor, and I'll yield the floor back.
Okay, thank you, Claude. We appreciate you. Thank you very much for the effort you made to make this happen. I really appreciate it. So, Mr. Kambale, the floor is yours.
Claude Gatebuke is my Rwandan brother, and he will always be my Rwandan brother. So, Claude, you should know, for anybody coming for you and saying that this Rwandan is XYZ, they have to go through me first. And I'm saying that because it's really important to understand when Congolese are saying these Rwandese, Rwanda, what do they mean, right? We may not have the best way to express our frustration, but we must be very clear that they are talking about the elite in Rwanda who have done everything in their power to not just oppress the Congolese, but people in the region. And Claude had to educate me on that. For those of you who follow Rwanda much closely, you will know that there is a artist, I think he's a fashion artist named Moses, who has been disappeared, right? I think now we know he's arrested, but for quite a few days, he disappeared from Rwanda because of a social media post against the president of Rwanda, Paul Kagame. Right? Like he actually, a Rwandan in Rwanda posted on Instagram the issues that he has with the ruling party and what they've done, he disappeared. And due to a few Rwandans and people around the world actually speaking up, they have now announced, we still haven't seen him, that he's arrested due to his social media posting. And of course, we're going to follow. And he's not the only one, right? So we've had genocide survivors in Rwanda arrested. Deo Mushahidi. We've had every woman who's ever run for president in Rwanda arrested, right? We've had people killed, right? A gospel singer, Kizito, a gospel singer now, singing about reconciliation, died, was killed in prison, and the Rwandan government said that he killed himself with a pillow, right? So in all of this, we all have to understand that Rwanda, as a small country, is ruled by a very brutal mafia. That anyone inside of Rwanda who even, when was the last time any one of you knew even of a protest against the regime in Rwanda? I mean, there are protests in Lagos, right? There are protests in Accra. There are people who also disagree with the government. Give me a name of one Rwandan inside of Rwanda who is critical of the Kagame regime who has not been in jail. So while we focus our attention to that, and of course for Congolese, because of the way the war is, the enemy we see is Rwanda, and people make clear to say that this is the case. And we have to tie it to some of the analysis and political education that Malcolm X made, right? When Malcolm X mobilized in Harlem, he spoke about the white man, right? It's not every white man who was the devil, right? But he understood white supremacy, and he explained that power dynamic that made sure that the blacks in the US, our brothers in the 6th region, were mistreated. So if you can understand Malcolm X saying the white man is the devil, not speaking about like the white man as a white man, right? In the concept, you can understand why Congolese would say Rwandese are the problem. Understanding also that Rwandan people themselves in their country are subjugated to that same negative force. Killing Congolese is keeping them also oppressed. Another element to add, we said that we have Rwandan soldiers in DRC. They are not invincible. They are being killed in the battle. So we know that thousands of Rwandan soldiers have died. I want you to find any article inside of Rwanda talking about dead soldiers and the impact on their families. It's for you to, I'm sharing that because when I speak to Rwandans to understand what's happening in their country, they say that imagine you have your son who's been recruited to the Rwandan military, and then they tell him, you must go to the Congo. If you don't go, you're gonna be killed or your family will be killed. Then your son goes to Congo and he dies on the battlefield, and they bring his body back and they don't even tell you how he died, and you can't even mourn, right? So you do also have Rwandan families who can mourn their loved ones. And that's a context also for Congolese, sometimes we do not have. And that's why I strongly believe the unity of people of the Africa Great Lakes region. This is why I speak with Rwandans, I speak with Ugandans to understand what's happening in their country, to understand their class struggle. Museveni has been in power since 1986. There are Ugandans fighting for change. In Rwanda, the same thing is there, to understand the struggle and then explain it, as I said before, that there is a mafia network keeping all of us oppressed. That's the enemy. That's the enemy that killed Lumumba. That's the enemy that killed Hammarskjöld. That's the enemy that's been killing us for quite some time, right? And to start bringing people together. So in closing, instead of going on and on the situation in the Congo, I mentioned it before, I'll mention it again. I hope that everyone on this call will go to freecongo.org. The website is freecongo.org to find actions you can do in your community. For those of you, I keep targeting West Africa because the propaganda of Kagame has really gotten into West Africa very strong. But for those of us in West Africa, in terms of the question of justice, we should know that the Congolese have actually brought the case of Rwanda into the African Court of Human Rights in Dakar. So as we speak right now, the case has already been, before even worrying about what we are doing at the ICC, Congolese have gone to the African Court of Human Rights in Dakar. So people who are going to listen to the case, the question now will become, what is the narrative that they already have before the Congolese came to talk to them? If they had propaganda, they may not understand it. So that's why the education component for people to really understand what is happening in DRC is so critical. Because in West Africa, right now, at the African Court of Human Rights, the case, the DRC has brought a case against Rwanda for Africans to actually listen to that. In closing, and this is the real closing now, before we continue, it is painful to hear the stories of those who've been affected. And I've tried even all throughout the activism I've done to not make it personal, to not share my family story, right? Because I still have family on the ground who are actually in the same area that we are discussing. So imagine being on a media platform where before you got on the media platform,
I think maybe Kambale had some technical issues again.
Okay, I think, yeah, like you said, it's like he has a technical issue. But before he comes, maybe we'll just formally round up this webinar. People have really tried. We have extended the time for almost an hour. So I want to call my partner, my co-convener, Dakore, to make the closing remarks. And after that, the floor will still be open for chats and comments and contribution. But formally bring this.
Thank you very much, Senator. I don't know if I can be heard because the network has been acting very funny.
Yes, we can hear and see you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. As we really draw to a close, you know, we've actually listened to ourselves on these critical issues. It's a great discussion on conflict in the DRC. And I would like to thank Cloud Gatabuke. I would also like to thank the sister, B. Gatabuke. I'd like to thank Kambale Musabuli and some of the participants who really thought well to join the conversation, either via chat box or asking questions. Kaz, Dr. Oluya Okulana. Then girl from Fizi, thank you very much. Afrofit and Delta of Congo. Thank you all for having your contribution heard. I'd like us to remember that the human faces behind the statistics and the headline is actually the main focus why we are here. We care about the lives and the properties of the people, both in the DRC and any other country that has had conflict. We've talked about the vulnerables, the women, the children, the families that have been affected by these conflicts, and they all deserve empathy, understanding, and collective actions. While we've explored some of those complex dynamics that I mentioned earlier, I would like us to strive for a future where the rich natural resources of Africa would not be measured above the lives of the people in Africa. We have the privilege, blessed by God, to have some of these things, but it's looking like these things are beginning to take a hold of us, our minds, our spirit, and our body. So I wish we can have a future where children can grow up without traumatic experiences. It's quite a trauma. And then where women can live without, fears of violence, just like Kambale was actually saying, that imagine when a child is taken to another country just to defend and the person comes back dead. These are fears. So together we can actually make a difference. And I have actually dropped down my social media handle. I'll be available for any collaboration. And I hope everyone too can actually be very much available for collaboration. And then I hope we can actually retweet what is actually going on. And I hope we can actually put our voice up together in unity, to tell the difference, to tell the story. So let us continue this conversation and work towards a brighter future for the DRC and its people, and of course for Africans. And then just like Gatabuke has mentioned, he mentioned Ibrahim of Burkina Faso. He's actually doing a great job, and he's one man really standing up for his country. So I would like to put the question out there. What would you stand for? We are all standing up for ourselves in different ways, but we can be unified for a purpose, and we can actually come together to do something. It's not just about attending a webinar. It is not just about airing opinions. It's about preferring solutions, implementing them, if you ask me. Yes, we have to implement everything we have actually talked about. May I also tender an apology for, we're actually expecting Professor PLO Lumumba, but we don't know what happened. We hope that the next webinar would have him on board. And then I would like to also say that our next edition of the webinar, Afrofit, I got that, but that could not be totally true. So our next edition it will be on Sudan and the Horn of Africa. I guess that would be a very interesting topic of discussion. I would like to have everybody on board as well. So thank you very much. I remain Dakore Ekendu, and you can actually get me on social media platforms at PIWD Sec Africa. So thank you very much for having me. And thank you, Senator Irigu, for making me, as always, your co-convener. I really do appreciate this opportunity. So for me, it is bye for now. Thank you. But we can actually continue the conversation.
Thank you, Dakore. I think I've officially closed the chat will be open for further interaction and conversation until whenever we are tired. So like she said, our next stop will be in Sudan and the Horn of Africa. So very soon you'll be getting information. Mr. Sani, Saeed, thanks. You've been here right from the start to the end. Thank you very much. So we are touching base very soon. And I know you take center stage.
Thank you, Senator.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to add, if you want to stream in the future, let us know ahead of time so we can see if HMG Studio and Mr. Freeman, whom you spoke to earlier, can
Okay, that's true.
possibly amplify it.
Yes, thank you for HMG's Studio, thank you very much. Before I forgot, thank you, Claude, for reminding me. Thank you for streaming it. Hope we are going to get the link. So in the next, we'll carry along in our next edition. Like we say, is our bus stop will be in Sudan. And after that, we go to the Sahel and West Africa. Then we move to the sixth region, that's the Africa and diaspora. Okay, thank you very much.